Day and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dorzinski and Dan Lucero joining you for the next 3 hours. Dan, I just realized we're wearing the same thing.
We are. We look like a bobsled team. I don't know why bobsled was
I
what
don't know either. It could be any team that has
be.
uniforms. Oh, man, I turned on the YouTube stream and I realized, we're both rocking our work quarter zip.
Do you want me to take it off? I got a polo underneath here. I got a nice gray station polo going underneath here.
Nah, you're good.
Matches the hat.
We were sitting next to each other all day, but I guess I was staring at my screen and I was prepping for high school hoops tonight, and I never looked over.
You were dialed in. Yeah, you were dialed in. It didn't occur to me either.
I have a sweatshirt in my car. Like, if I was really embarrassed, I could go grab it. Well, no, I couldn't because it's freezing out there, and I would get hypothermia and die.
We look like we're on the same football coaching staff.
Yeah.
You're the play caller, and I'm the get back guy.
I look like a quality control coach. No one's listening to me. Glorified coffee boy. We do appreciate you guys joining us, though, for this 3-hour edition of 580 Sports Talk. We do have a lot to get to coming up over the course of the next 3 hours, and we would love your thoughts on everything we are getting to. That includes a little talk about the Chiefs draft. No, not exactly. We're going to read off a mock draft for you, but there are a couple from The Athletic we'll get to, and the Chiefs have a ton of picks. They have 12 picks in this year's draft. I think it'd be dumb to take that many picks. We'll talk about how many they should take, what are they going to do, what should they target, things like that coming up here in just a few minutes. We'll also talk a little bit later on in the show today about the Chiefs' roster stability. I don't know if any team in the league except maybe Cincinnati and Philly, maybe, have roster situations as good as the Chiefs right now. So we'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on in the show today. We do have some college basketball to get to. CJ Moore is going to join us at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for the Big 12 basketball breakdown. We'll also talk about some high school hoops this hour with Rick Peterson from TopSports.news for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. We've got crosstalk with Fulton today. That's coming up top of the 4 o'clock hour. We've got some best bets coming up tonight, including the funniest point total of the college basketball season. It is hideous.
It's so bad.
I didn't even see what the spread was in this game.
3.5?
3.5. So I will tell you, the implied score of this game is approximately 57-53.
Yep.
That's what Vegas is telling you the final score of this Division I college basketball game is going to be.
Shockingly, not talking about a Wisconsin game or a Virginia game.
Higher point total. Hayden versus Eudora boys tonight. 2 top 10 teams in Class 4A. Or Charlotte versus North Texas.
Oh, man.
That shouldn't be a question.
No.
That should not even be in the discussion.
No.
So we'll get to that a little bit more in our best bets later on in the show today. Of course, we've got What Is Wrong With You headlines of either or over under this hour as well. It's all coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. We'd love for you to chime in on the show. The Big O Tires text line is wide open. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And, of course, the YouTube comment section is open as well. Our channel is, of course, Sports on 580 WIBW. Go subscribe if you haven't yet, and make sure you are always ready to go for all of our live streams, post-game shows, and so much more. That's on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW.
Video content. We're doing like TikToks on there now.
Yeah, so I'm
going to do the gritty.
Are you?
No.
Is that confirmed?
No.
Is that a binding contract? No, we've got, we're starting to do the YouTube shorts. So they're just little minute-long, bite-sized takes and clips from the show, from post-game videos. They're popping up there. Hey, maybe I want to check out, what did Brendan think about franchise tags the other day? What was Dan's take about should the Chiefs re-sign Juju Smith-Schuster on yesterday's show? That's all on the YouTube now, too. So we're doing a whole lot of stuff online. No time better than the present to go and subscribe to our ever-growing YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. And as I teased a moment ago, we do have high school basketball coming up tonight as well. 7:30 start time, so a little bit late. There's going to be a little Dave Ramsey action in between for you. But 7:30 coming up tonight, Hayden versus Eudora, final game of the regular season for Hayden. This is a rematch of the quarterfinals from 4A State last year when Hayden upset Eudora. Cardinals come into this one third in the class, and the Wildcats are 10th in the class. 7:30 tonight, myself and Larry Latimer right here on 580 WIBW. But to lead off 580 Sports Talk right now, the Kansas City Chiefs have 12 picks in the upcoming NFL draft. That includes the 32nd, technically 31st, technically pick in the draft. There are only 31 picks this year in the first round. The Dolphins had theirs taken away because they were committing essentially NFL white-collar crime last offseason.
Doing a little light tampering.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe we'll just steal Tom Brady, give him part of the team. It's fine.
I almost feel like unsuccessful tampering should be more of a punishment. Like you were tampering and you weren't even good enough at it to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's essentially what the the NBA's penalties are. Like the Bulls lost a second-round pick this year for tampering. Like you guys stink. You didn't even accomplish anything with this. You tampered and still failed. That's an embarrassment to the league. You're out of here. So the Dolphins are not going to pick 21st. So everyone behind them moves up a spot. So the Chiefs pick 31st, and then they have 11 picks after that. That includes, Dan, the final pick of the second round. It includes multiple third-round picks as well.
Fourth
round picks. Do they have one third-round pick this year?
One third rounder, 95th. And then they've got
yes,
a whole mess of day 3 picks. They got 2 fourth rounders, they've got 3 sixth rounders, and they've got 3 seventh rounders.
Yes. So what are the Chiefs going to do with all of those picks? Let me start out by saying I think it's dumb to take that many picks in a draft because at some point, unless you have essentially traded away your entire roster, there's not really anything, like there's no room for all of those guys. So what, you're going to have extra competition in training camp? You're going to try to slide a 4th round pick to your practice squad? Like that doesn't make sense. The Vikings a few years ago did this. They had 15 picks in a draft.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think, the 2020 draft, but it might have been 21. They have 15 picks. What do you think you're going to accomplish with all that? And look, they haven't accomplished anything except the most overrated 14-win team of all time. So I don't think it makes sense to make 12 picks. Once you hit about 10, I think you're starting to get into diminishing returns territory. Because, again, it's a math problem. How many roster spots do you have? How many roster spots do you need to fill?
And it's not like there are a ton of free agents on this team and not a whole ton of guys either that project to be cap casualties. Like of the guys who are under contract for 2023, like maybe Clyde and Frank Clark are your casualties. And I'm not even sure Clyde, they didn't pick up his option, did they? Or
they have not. They need to do that this offseason, though.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to do it this year before you do it before year 4.
Yeah, before year 4.
Yeah.
So like maybe they move him, maybe they move off of him, maybe they do end up cutting Frank Clark, which we speculated about them doing for 2 years now.
Right.
But like the 53 is as well settled for the Chiefs as it is for any team in the league, and it's hard to see 12 rookies. Even though when you look at the Chiefs and what they've done on day 3, they've been spectacularly successful on day 3. Think about the day 3 picks who started in the Super Bowl. Trey Smith, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams got a lot of run in that playoff run. Another day 3 pick. Like they've had a great deal of success.
Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, almost forgot the guy who led the team in rushing as a 7th round pick. So it's tempting in one hand to kind of look at what the Chiefs have and say, hey, this is where Brett Veach gets it done. This is exciting to have 6 picks in the final 2 rounds because this is where the Chiefs are making things happen and finding diamonds in the rough. But at the same time, how many roster slots do you have for this year's diamonds in the rough? And can you use those 6th and 7th round picks to maybe move up a couple of spots in the 3rd round or move up a spot or so in the 2nd round? Or maybe even trade into next year's draft and kind of roll these picks into some picks for next year where you can maybe see about if you need to reload your roster at that level, doing it at that point. But it's very hard to imagine that the Chiefs make 12 selections in the NFL draft. Very, very difficult to see that happening.
I think this is the opportunity for the Chiefs with this many picks. Now, I don't know exactly what the math looks like. I don't have either the Rich Hill or the Jimmy Johnson chart in front of me. So I don't know exactly what it would take to move up in various spots, but with this many picks, This feels like the time when the Chiefs can be extra aggressive on days 1 and 2 with that bevy of day 3 picks that they have. And again, Chiefs have been very good on the final day of the draft. I mean, ever since 2018, which was undeniably a total dud of a draft. Ever since then, the Chiefs have been phenomenal making picks for the most part. I mean, every team's going to have a couple busts or a couple whiffs or whatever. But, I mean, on balance with the rest of the league, the Chiefs have been phenomenal over the last couple of years. By the way, they also made a ton of picks last year. They made, 10 picks last year? 11? Yeah, so you're not going to make that many picks back-to-back years. That just doesn't make any sense. Unless, again, you essentially thought you needed to tear down your entire roster and start anew, which the Chiefs obviously do not. But this feels like the kind of year where you're picking 31st. For example, offensive tackle is supposedly a very deep position this year. That, the last couple of years, wide receiver has been somewhat deep.
Mm-hmm.
There have been off and on with quarterbacks. Every year, there's one or two positions that are very deep, one or two that are stay away. Like wide receiver this year is considered a much more middling class than the last 2 or 3. Offensive tackle this year, though, and edge rusher are expected to be pretty darn deep classes, both of which are positions the Chiefs could use. Whether they cut or keep Frank Clark, whatever they do with Orlando Brown.
Or Andrew Wiley,
great point. You've got to find some more pieces there. So if you're set to pick 31st and it gets to pick, let's say 27. Let's say who's picking 27th this year? The Cowboys. Say the Cowboys are on the clock right there. And you think, man, BJ Ojulari is right there from LSU. We really like him. He's not necessarily the size standard we want, but man, that speed is tempting, especially if he's our third edge as a rookie. Man, we like him a lot. Let's go get him. You got an extra 4. You throw it. You got an entire day's worth of sweeteners, essentially. Yeah, we'll move our first rounder and, one of the 4ths and a 6th or something like that. You move up just a couple spots, make sure you go get your guy in that spot. You can do that on days 1 and 2 when you've got all these extra picks. And I imagine that's exactly what Brett Veach is going to do, because the Chiefs have never, at least under his tenure, shied away from saying, that's our guy, we want to go get him. I mean, that dates all the way back to Mahomes. But really, over the last couple of years, look at the moves they've made to go up to be able to acquire some of these guys. If they like a guy, they're willing to get it, which means they're in a really good spot right now to continue that trend.
We know their MO, and it's probably not too dissimilar to the MO of a lot of teams when it comes to the NFL draft, is you have a list of players that you believe are first-round talents.
Yes.
And it was not a long list. Last year's draft was not considered to be like a spectacular draft.
Yeah, what was it generally considered? Like 15 players maybe last year?
Something like that. Yeah, it was not considered to be a particularly deep draft. And the Chiefs had their list. And this is well documented. The Chiefs had their list of guys that they thought were first-round talents. And the last guy on their list was Trent McDuffie. And they had a chance to move up and get McDuffie. And they struck, and they got the guy that was the last guy on their list that they said, this is a first-round player. This is a guy who walks into our lineup day 1. This is a game changer, first-round talent. We've got a chance to go get him. We're going to cash in some chips, and we're going to move up, and we're going to get Trent McDuffie. And that worked out, I would say, pretty well.
Really
for the
well.
Chiefs. So, yeah, they're definitely not shy about doing that. And just as I would be surprised if they make 12 draft picks and think there's no way that they make 12 draft picks, I think they're going to be aggressive, even if it's not day 1. I definitely could see them moving up day 2 or day 3 if they believe that there's a wide receiver or an edge rusher or a safety or an offensive lineman who can factor in for them right away. I think those are the 4 positions that are most interesting to me going into this draft. Offensive tackle, because as we mentioned, as of right now, we don't know who's going to play for the Chiefs at offensive tackle. We assume they're going to franchise tag Orlando Brown again. Maybe they get something done with Andrew Wiley, but those guys aren't rostered as soon as the league year ends. So maybe there's an opportunity for the Chiefs to go grab a tackle. Maybe they look at their tackle situation and say, hey, we only need one because we're going to bring Orlando Brown back. Or, hey, we don't need anybody because we'll plug Lucas Niang into the starting lineup. Maybe they're still really high on Lucas Niang. That's Super Bowl participant Lucas Niang.
That's right.
This year. But I think that they could certainly use, either way you slice it, some depth at offensive line. Typically, though, you're not making depth picks day 1, maybe even not on day 2 at that spot. But offensive tackle's intriguing. Edge, because you can never have too many edge rushers.
Never.
I know they drafted one in the first round last year. George Karlaftis started to pay some dividends down the stretch. I'd expect him to be better in year 2 and continue to grow. But you can never have too many guys who can get after the quarterback, guys who can get after it with speed, guys who can get after it with power, but guys who can accumulate sacks. The Chiefs were good enough on defense this past year in large part because they could sack the quarterback. Adding some rotational depth to go with Karlaftis and Mike Dana and Chris Jones and all those guys are going to be back for next season. Wide receiver, because like we talked about yesterday, the Chiefs sort of rebuilt that position on the fly last year, may have to do it again this year. I think, again, that all depends on, do they see Kadarius Toney as 60% of the offensive snaps a game kind of wide receiver, or do they see him as 10 snaps a game, but they're all going to be hugely impactful kind of player? Because if they see him as the latter, I don't think there's any way around it. They need to add somebody else who could play the X or the Y, essentially, in that offense. And I would think there would be, again, it's not a deep position, but maybe somebody late first round or maybe somebody day 2 worth grabbing there. And then safety kind of depends on what they do with Juan Thornhill, right? Because Justin Reed's under contract. Brian Cook was a rookie. I think that kind of depends on what happens with Thornhill. Does he command a contract offer from another team, or is he somebody that the Chiefs prioritize to bring back? Or do the Chiefs say, hey, we'd like to maybe plug in somebody younger, somebody with less injury history, and see if we can't get younger, a little bit more athletic at this spot?
So Nate Taylor over at The Athletic put together a mock draft for the Chiefs that was published today. First round, he had them going with an edge rusher, B.J. Ojulari. I think at this point of the draft process, it's more important to look at the position, or if you really know a guy's pedigree, as opposed to, well, it could be this edge or this edge. I think it's more important to look at the position specifically. So he's got edge rusher, B.J. Ojulari from LSU in the first round. Offensive tackle, Darnell Wright from Tennessee in the second, although Nate admitted, hey, he probably isn't going to be there. But hey, if he is, great. Dream scenario for the Chiefs. And then in the third round, he goes with a safety, Brandon Joseph from Notre Dame. Gets his first wide receiver then in the fourth round after that. And again, you get into the day 3 picks there. Does that sound fairly reasonable in terms of position, like what the Chiefs are actually going to need at this point? I think you could argue that offensive tackle might be the bigger priority here at this point, because who knows what's going to happen with Andrew Wiley. I mean, truly, that one feels like it's way up in the air, because he might get overpaid by someone who really needs tackle help. And hey, if that's what happens, then
if he priced
awesome for him.
If he priced himself out of the Chiefs shopping list based on a Super Bowl winning performance, I think that's a trade you gladly make if you're the Chiefs.
That's also a major win for the Chiefs, because hey, Andrew Wiley was nobody. Like he was barely a roster guy a few years ago, and now he played an awesome game in the Super Bowl. Really, he was awesome all season for the most part.
He went from a guy who was part of maybe the worst offensive line performance in the history of a Super Bowl to one of the all-time best offensive line performances in the history of a Super Bowl. That's a pretty cool redemption arc for Andrew Wiley.
No kidding. So I think you could argue, depending on what happens with Orlando Brown, that offensive tackle might be the bigger need. But I think either of those two spots, edge or tackle, you need more depth in the immediate future regardless. So I think either one of those is fine.
Drafting an edge is like going to the cookie platter at a buffet and taking the chocolate chip cookie. Like, you're never going to go wrong with the chocolate chip cookie. You can never have enough chocolate chip cookies. Like, you're never going to be at fault or faulted. Nobody's going to look at you funny if you walk. They might look at you funny if you take the oatmeal raisin. They might judge you a little bit for that, but never for the chocolate chip cookie. Edge rushers are always in demand. And the Chiefs, I think we've talked about their player development at other positions, but I think that the growth of that position maybe is a little bit undersold, given what we saw Karlaftis do in the second half of this last season, given what Mike Dana turned into, the year Colin Saunders had, the year Turk Wharton was having before he got hurt. Joe Cullen did a whale of a job with that position group. And the Chiefs might look at that and say, hey, we can bring somebody in and watch them develop, watch them grow into a rotational piece for us who can help us right away. And that might be something that increases in value for them for that reason.
Dana's an interesting piece because he's going into his contract year. And he's been very solid with occasional flashes of, wow, this dude can really play. I mean, he played for 3 or 4 years at Michigan for a reason. I mean, he's a good player, good prospect.
He was at, I think he was at Central Michigan, and then he transferred. He finished at Michigan.
Was it that way or the other way around?
No, it was Central Michigan to Michigan. Yeah, I remember that.
For some reason, I thought it was the other way around. He went from Michigan, needed more playing time, and went to Central Michigan.
No, it was Central Michigan. He was a really good player in the MAC, and then became a really good player in the Big Ten.
Yes. No, you are spot on with that. I had it backwards. But yeah, I mean, he's a good prospect for a reason. So that's an interesting piece too. And maybe another reason why you would look first toward edge depth, that, hey, maybe Dana plays really well in his contract year, but is he good enough to warrant a second contract from us, or is he going to go somewhere else to get that second contract? Again, that's a win. If you can ever draft a guy on day 3 who becomes a second contract player, whether it's for you or for someone else, that is a win for your franchise. And that's where Dana is trending right now. So that's another big win for the Chiefs. Obviously, we're a ways away from the draft.
I want to get to this question from the YouTube comments. Our guy Matt chiming in the YouTube comments asking, what round do you think the Chiefs would pick a backup quarterback, and who? They've got 2 on the roster. Patrick Mahomes, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. And Shane Buechele, who the Chiefs have really prioritized keeping to the point where he was always on the game day roster. They never tried to slip him through the practice squad. They were worried that a team would claim him. And so they kept him on the 53, and they made him inactive for all the games. Like, they like Shane Buechele. And I wouldn't be shocked if Buechele is the number 2 going into next year. I also wouldn't be shocked if the Chiefs maybe look at the fact that Chad Henne has had to not just play, but perform in 2 playoff games in the last 3 years and say, if Mahomes tweaks an ankle again in the divisional round and we're in the Super Bowl window, we maybe don't want to leave that to I almost called him Steve Buechele. Is that his dad?
Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Steve Buechele. He was when I was
Chicago Cub.
Yes, when I was starting to follow baseball, he was the Cub third baseman with Steve Buechele.
Yeah.
Former Ranger as well. Anyhow, I don't know if they would trust Shane Buechele in the same spots where they've trusted Chad Henne. So again, I wouldn't necessarily bank on the Chiefs drafting a quarterback, but if they've got a 7th round pick that they don't trade, then maybe there's a quarterback out there. I'm not as educated. I know that Nate Taylor's got him taking Jaron Hall of BYU in the 7th round in his mock draft. I mean, that's one option. That was a multi-year starter at BYU, put up some numbers.
Yeah.
But I think a lot depends on how they evaluate what they really need from a backup quarterback. And if what Henne gave them in the divisional round this year, and now knowing that that's twice in 3 years, you've needed a pinch hitter for Mahomes in the playoff game. If that maybe changes how the Chiefs prioritize having a veteran backup quarterback.
My assumption is they're going to ride with Buechele as number 2. I don't think you keep him around on the active roster all year unless you intended to make sure you are not going to lose him for the long haul. And I think it benefits the Chiefs to have a guy who knows the system really well, because you can make an argument. You go after a Henne type quarterback. Like, if you wanted a backup that is not going to do anything that wows you, but is at least going to make you look competent, like, you could go give Andy Dalton $2 million probably next year to be your backup. Like, if you're looking for just don't throw an interception if you have to come into the game and dump it off to Travis Kelce and Jerick McKinnon. Yeah, I think Andy Dalton could probably handle that. Then that's just a random name, but I don't think you go that route with the backup, with the veteran backup who hasn't been there before, over a guy who's now been a backup for a couple of years and knows the system. So I don't think the Chiefs are going to take a quarterback this year. Maybe in the set. I mean, I've seen some people say Jaron Hall might be closer to 4th or 5th round pick than a 7th. So if he's there in the 7th, maybe you just take him and say, hell, let's hold on to him and trade him if we need to.
From the Big O Tires text line from the 785 suggests Max Duggan as backup quarterback and all-time quarterback sneaker, which I don't know if that's a K-State fan maybe making that in jest after he failed to get that final yard there, or didn't get a chance to get the final yard in the Big 12 championship game. But I'm not sure Duggan's going to get drafted.
No, I don't think he will. And
he didn't play well in the Senior Bowl. He practiced really well, but he didn't play well. And I think that the team that drafts him is probably again, you're looking for maybe scheme fit with him.
He feels to me like backup quarterback in Canada. And I don't mean that as a slight. Like, That is a very real thing in the CFL. Trust me, I would know. Like the backup who can run really well, because guys don't get hurt all that, or not nearly to the same degree, because the rules are different for quarterbacks, especially. Like Jordan Lynch had a multi-year career in the Canadian Football League and was wildly successful as a backup quarterback. Like that's what Duggan, I think, can do. And he's an incredible college quarterback and obviously had an amazing season, but I don't really think there's much NFL talent there, personally.
We have a texter from the 913 that suggests he's Mason Rudolph 2.0, and I'm not even sure like he'll get that
I don't think so.
level of opportunity that Rudolph got.
No,
it's just one source, but NFLDraftBuzz.com I think has him 17th in the quarterback class.
Yeah,
behind luminaries like Clayton Tune and Aiden O'Connell.
One-time KU commit Clayton Tune. I could see a team with pick like 260 taking him just to see, like, let's give it a shot.
Okay, he's actually 12th. If they're going to take anybody, they got to take the god Jake Haener.
Oh, yes. No, correct. Absolutely take Jake Haener. Jake Haener is going to start an NFL game at some point. I am confident in that. We do have to get to a quick break here. We'll talk more Chiefs later on in the show. Either or over-unders coming up next, then Rick Peterson later on this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. I was just informed we've got some homer takes from Fulton Castor about the Kansas City Royals and their pitching staff.
Can't wait.
So Fulton's going to join us for crosstalk at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. I just promised Jake that I would yell at him.
Can't wait. Very excited.
Not going to be good. We got to get to a quick round of either or over under here before we get to Rick Peterson for today. Over under 2.5 wins for KU the rest of the Big 12 season.
2.5. Does this include the
Not including the tournament.
So the regular season, 2.5. Do they sweep their way through it?
West Virginia at home, Texas Tech at home, Texas on the road.
Boy, and that Texas one might be for all the money.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to imagine KU losing a money game like that. Yeah, and they're not losing at home. I'll say over. Maybe that's a homer pick for me. But yeah, I'll say over. I think they win all 3 of those games. I think they're getting better and better as it goes, and figuring out how to win games in different ways, and that's going to serve them well. And they're going to win the Big 12 again.
I'm leaning toward over as well. I think they get it done down at Texas. Now, if KU wins its next 2 and Texas loses either of its games to Baylor or TCU, KU earns a share of the title. And then the game in Austin really only means something for Texas. It doesn't mean nearly as much for KU.
Right.
So that might change things, but I think KU gets business done. I will say they go over. They win all 3.
Over under 2.5 players from universities located in the state of Kansas named to the first team All Big 12.
What was the number?
2.5.
2.5 over.
Wilson is a yes. I think Marquise Noel is a yes.
I think so
He's
too.
leading the conference in scoring and assists in conference play.
And steals.
Yeah, like he's going to be first team All Big 12.
Yeah, I don't think there's even a question about that. And I think Keontae Johnson gets it.
You
too.
think Johnson
I really
does?
do. There are so many guys that are in contention for it and deserve a spot. You know, Miles should. He missed a bunch of times. You put him on. What do you do with all these guys?
Which Texas guy? Because if they win a share of the league title, they got to have a guy on the first team. But which one is it? Is it Carr? Is it Allen? Is it Hunter?
No, that's a great point.
Which of the Baylor guards? Do you put 2 of them on the team?
Yeah, you could certainly make that argument. But I think those guys have all. I think that really makes the argument, though, because Jalen Wilson's a no doubt. But for the K-State guys, like, okay, well, which of the Baylor guys, or who from Texas, or who from these other, like, for K-State, it's pretty clearly like, no, those are both dudes. Like, those are both 2 alphas, and I think they both deserve it for that reason. So, yeah, I would go with over on that number as well. Let's get to a quick timeout. Rick Peterson joins us next on 580 Sports Talk.
world.
Rick Peterson covers prep sports in Topeka and Shawnee County better than anyone, and he does it over at topsports.news. You can also follow Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. What's going on, Pistol? How are you?
I'm good.
Well, we've got a ton to get to on the prep scene, so let's jump right into it on this Thursday afternoon, Pistol, and let's start on the mats. And how about a state championship for the third year in a row for the Washburn Rural girls wrestling team, picking up a team championship. And I know you've been witnessing that today, Pistol. Take us back to the championship win for the Lady Blues.
Okay, actually 3 and 4 years. They went
That's right.
win, second win. So that's a great run for them. And this is the most amazing one because they didn't even have a person in the finals, but they just really just killed it on the backside and had nine state medalists, 10 girls that made it to the final day and clinched the title before we're just getting started in the finals now, and they already clinched the title.
That is truly remarkable. And it's remarkable. We talk about this every year when Washburn Rural wins these titles, Pistol, but the fact that the sport wasn't even a sanctioned championship sport just a handful of years ago, and now Damon Parker and Washburn Rural have built that into a winner year in, year out. 3 firsts and a second. Thank you for correcting me. It is amazing the success they've been able to sustain in these last few years.
Yeah, and they got a lot coming back. They lose some very good seniors, including Addie Brocksterman, but they got a good group coming back. So I don't think anything's going to change as far as them being a contender.
By the way, everyone, go check out Pistol on Twitter right now. Again, at Peterson_Rick, an incredible picture of Coach Damon Parker and Addie Brocksterman celebrating the third place win in the state championship. It is absolutely an awesome shot from down there at Hartman Arena. Speaking of state champions, Pistol, looking at another sport from this past weekend, how about Luke Perkins at Shawnee Heights leading the way at the 5A, 1A state swimming championships, 4 first-place medals of his own?
Yeah, he's had 12 total medals, including 4 medals for the last 2 years. So, yeah, he's really had a great career, finished up a great career. And then Jack Miranda of Washburn Rural, he had 3 medals this year, and he's got another year to go. So we got some good. It's tough to win golds in that swimming because it's just such a tough class, but they're doing very well.
Yeah, to have that many different classes all competing against one another, obviously 5A through 1A, that is as deep as it gets. So truly incredible, both for Jack and Luke, among others, at state swimming this past week. Pistol, do want to talk a little bit about what's going on the hardwood as well. Some big games going on this weekend. It's obviously the final weekend of the regular season. Hayden plays tonight. Got some other games coming up tomorrow as well. But I do want to talk about one team in particular going into the weekend. They'll play tonight too. The Seaman Vikings, they'll take on Turner tonight. On the boys' side, we know their girls have been number 1 all year long. But what is it about February up in North Topeka, Pistol, where yet again, Seaman 7-7 kind of floundering, and now they're red hot going into the end of the year?
Well, and I saw them the other night, and they were just really, really good the other night. Forcing a running clock against a really good Shawnee Heights team.
That is not something we have seen all year. And we know Shawnee Heights is a darn good team too. And I think, Pistol, this really just reinforces what we've talked about all year with how deep Class 5A is in general, but in the city of Topeka on the boys' side. Highland Park has obviously gone through some changes in the last couple of weeks, but they're continuing to dominate. Seaman's on fire. Shawnee Heights is a ranked team. And Topeka West, which is slumping right now, having lost 4 in a row, I would still argue that they're as dangerous as anybody with some of their talent and with head coach Rick Bloomquist at the helm.
Yeah, they definitely do. They've been without some players, which has certainly hurt them. But I never count out a Rick Bloomquist team.
On the girls' side of things, we will stick with Class 5A and get what is essentially a just weekly recap at this point of how dominant the Seaman girls have been. 18-1, Pistol. And the thing that has stood out to me the most about them as they get ready for sub-state and hopefully a trip to the state tournament, they're doing this with tons of underclassmen and juniors. Like, this is not a roster of 9 seniors or something. This is a bunch of sophomores and juniors and a couple of freshmen who have made the major impact this year.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. They're going to be good for quite some time. No, this is just this could be they could have a championship caliber team for the next 3 or 4 years.
We're talking to Rick Peterson from TopSports.News. It's our Invista Credit Union High School whip round here on 580 Sports Talk. We do it every Thursday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour. You can go find all of Pistol's tremendous work covering prep sports in Topeka and across Shawnee County over at TopSports.News. And you can find him on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. In girls in Class 6A, Pistol, I am fascinated by the race going into Substate and at the end of the season here for our two local teams in Class 6A. Washburn Rural, obviously the defending state champs. They, like we talked about last week, really feel like they're hitting their stride after that unfortunate injury to Zoe Canfield. I know they had a little bit of a hiccup against Manhattan over the last couple of days, but they're playing really darn well right now. And I'm fascinated by Topeka High, too. They picked up a big win over Hayden when we saw them last Friday, and they picked up a win earlier this week as well. Feels like those two teams, they might not be at the top of the standings, but it feels like they're as dangerous as anyone.
Well, and I think that is another class that's pretty deep. So I don't think there's necessarily a dominant team in that class, but there's several that could jump up and get a title.
And how likely is it that both high and rural can be in that conversation? You know, both are a little bit different than the teams we've seen in recent years. We just mentioned the injury issues with Washburn Rural. Topeka High, obviously first-year head coach. They've got as many losses this year as the last, I think it's 3 years combined, but they're still playing really well, and it feels like they've really kind of hit that stride. How close to the top of that contending group are the Junior Blues and the Trojans?
Well, I think they can be. Rural had a little bit of a hiccup the other night when they got beat by Blue Valley. I think that was an 11-point loss. Now, Blue Valley was third in the state last year, so that's nothing to sneeze about. But, they got to get back on track. And they got another tough game at Emporia on Friday night. So we'll see. But I'm not sure they were the favorite last year, and they went in and won it. So you never count them out.
Yeah, that matchup with Emporia coming up tonight should be an absolute blast. I want to flip back to the boys really quick, Pistols. We talk about all the action on the hardwood, and I do want to get to the Hayden boys as well. They're going to play tonight, taking on Eudora for their regular season finale. We'll be there for the call of that game, 7:30 tonight here on 580 WIBW. The last time these two teams played, Pistol, Hayden picked up an upset win at the Tony's Pizza Event Center in Salina at the 4A state tournament last year. It's just the second 4A team that Hayden has played all year long. Do you feel like this team, and I know I asked you this a couple weeks back, but does it feel right now with where Hayden is, the schedule they've played, the way they're playing right now, that it feels like they're making a similar run to last year, or at the very least could have similar success to what they found at the end of last year?
You know, Hayden's made their living in all sports on that kind of scheduling. I mean, they play these tough schedules, they take their lumps, and then by the time they get to postseason, nobody's going to intimidate them because they've already faced the 5A and 6A competition. And I think it is the same, but I think it's nothing new for them. They're just used to, they don't worry about necessarily their record, but they worry about March and things like that.
We're talking with Rick Peterson of TopSports.News. It's the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. We do it every Thursday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. And, of course, all of his great work, essential work covering sports in Shawnee County at TopSports.News. Let's step outside the city limits for this one, Pistol. A bit of news coming in yesterday that a merger is being considered between the Mid-East League and the Big Seven. Both of those leagues standing to lose members, Riverside leaving the Big Seven and Rock Creek leaving the Mid-East League, and an opportunity for those two outstanding conferences to potentially merge. How real is this possibility, and what would it mean for Silver Lake, Rossville, the rest of those Mid-East League schools and the Big Seven schools as well?
Well, I think it would be a good move. I never count on that kind of stuff, Dan, until it's actually approved. Because when every day, obviously the prospective member schools got a vote on it, and I've seen some that I thought were a done deal that ended up not going through. So we'll just see. But I think it would be good. I mean, I think leagues are in trouble right now. I mean, we're down Centennial League down to 6 teams, 5 in football. And so I think if you could get some of these teams to merge up and make for bigger leagues, I think it would be good.
And I think, too, Pistol, this one feels a little bit, well, not even a little. This is a lot different than when you see the Centennial League break up and it gets so fractured and you've got now teams from the city in 3 different conferences. To just have a straight-up merger, I know it's because a couple schools are breaking off, but I feel like that is a better way to address what is going on with teams moving around than just completely fracturing, because you're keeping Silver Lake versus Rossville. You're keeping some of those other local regional rivalries. I mean, that's what this is all about. You and I have talked about that. We've all talked about that so many times. This feels like a healthier step than just saying, well, go off on your own and do your own thing.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I hate it when we lose the rivalry. Some of these rivalries have gone for years and years and decades, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're not playing you anymore. And I hate that, because I think the communities love these rivalries, the schools love these rivalries, most of the kids all know each other. So I agree. I think we should look at some, quote unquote, super leagues, including, even if you have to put in like a couple different divisions. So I would like to see them, look at some of those options.
No, I'm right there with you. And the other thing, too, and Dan alluded to this, that would be probably the best small school league in the entire state, right? I mean, you look at Silver Lake's athletic department, Rossville, and all the success they've had, Nemaha Central, all the leagues, or all the schools in those 2 leagues. I mean, that would be as strong as any group in the entire state.
Yeah, no, it would be a very good and a very traditional powers. I mean, so I think that is good too. And some of these people probably have already played. Some of them probably haven't played as much, and it would be an opportunity. I love the rivalries, but I also like it when people can see some new teams.
Yeah, it'll be a blast if that indeed goes through. But I'm with you, Pistol. We got to make sure that it actually does go through first before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Rick Peterson joins us every Thursday for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around here on 580 Sports Talk. Find his incredible work covering preps over at topsports.news. Find him on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. Pistol, what does the rest of your weekend look like after state wrestling today?
Well, 2 more days of state wrestling.
That's right.
We finish up the girls today, and then have the boys the next 2 days, and I'll be here for the whole weekend.
Well, enjoy the wrestling all weekend. I know that is always one of the most fun events of the entire year. Pistol, as always, we appreciate the time. We will talk to you next week in the midst of basketball Substate.
Okay, look forward to it.
That is Rick Peterson of topsports.news joining us for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. I agree with Pistol wholeheartedly about that. Like, if we're going to end up fracturing and splintering and dividing these teams up differently, just make bigger leagues so you can keep, even more maybe than college sports where rivalries are kind of the lifeblood of the whole thing. Like, let's be realistic. In small towns in our area or around the state, playing your rival school, going to the, football games against other kids, other schools, programs, basketball games, whatever, that's meaningful. There's meaning to that. There's a lot of, emotion and, just other meaning tied up in that. Just make bigger leagues as opposed to making a ton of smaller ones.
Yeah. Or, I mean, and I don't know if this is the right thing, but what people are really competing for anymore anyway are district championships, playoff spots. You want to make a deep run in the playoffs. The league, I just don't think holds the same allure that it used to, at least not in football for certain.
For sure.
Basketball is a little different, but I think you kind of, teams have looked at leagues, certainly the local schools that have switched leagues in recent years away from the Centennial League have made that move primarily because of football. If there were no leagues in football, I think the Centennial League for basketball would probably still exist.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, it still would. So now that is a storyline we will definitely be following involving some of our other county teams. We do need to get to a break here at the top of the hour for our national and local news. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, we've got Crosstalk, CJ Moore, and What Is Wrong With You, all coming your way on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour, just getting started on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thank you so much for stopping by on this Thursday, February 23rd, 2023. Whether you're listening on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, checking us out online at 580WIBW.com, or watching us on YouTube on our channel, Sports on 580 WIBW, we appreciate spending some of your afternoon hours with us here today. We've got Crosstalk in just a moment with Fulton Caster. We'll also get to what is wrong with you this hour. And CJ Moore of The Athletic is going to join us for the Big 12 basketball breakdown, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I got to stop by 23rd Street soon. Get myself some Bill Self.
Yeah, I've been craving the buffalo chicken mac and cheese, known as the Bill Self.
Also, as I like to point out frequently, the chicken parm, severely underrated. It is delightful.
I love chicken parm.
I do too. Oh, it's so good. I'm about to tell Abby we have to go soon. Her in-laws, or my in-laws, her parents are in town this weekend. They actually just got in a little bit ago. So we will be eating well this weekend.
And hello to the Dworzinskis if they happen to be, or the Gilliland Kings if they happen to be listening.
There you go. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're up to right now. My wife was picking them up at KCI a little bit ago. I have no idea what they've got all sorts of plans while I am at work today and tomorrow. I'm not.
They're gonna do all the fun stuff.
They're gonna.
Well, you got to hang out with me on the radio.
They're going to Manhattan to see some family. They're gonna go shopping on Mass Street. They're gonna go see the rules of basketball tomorrow. I will be here. Not that I'm not happy to be here. Obviously happy to be here, but they're going to be out gallivanting, doing all sorts of stuff. Don't forget that you can chime in and let us know your thoughts on anything we're talking about today, either in the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Already had someone subscribe last hour. Thank you for doing so. More and more stuff is going up on the YouTube every single day, so we would love for you to check it out. And of course, the Big O Tires text line wide open as always, 785-272-9429. And with that, let's get some crosstalk. Fulton Caster, co-host of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, joining us. Usually this would be Jake's spot in the rotation, but he's got some Washburn basketball to go get ready for. So Fulton back for a second week in a row. I'm going to start with a softball here because things are going to get heated. Okay. And we're going to talk about the Kansas City Royals momentarily. Jake was in here during a commercial break earlier in the show and used some very choice words when talking about Fulton and his optimism for the Royals and their contention status for this year.
Oh boy.
So I am sure Jake et al. Did not misrepresent my thoughts on the subject in not understanding how I actually feel about this team.
Before we get to this, and I'm not going to throw him under the bus because he's not here to defend himself.
I will. I gladly will. But yes.
Before we get there.
Yes.
Favorite flavored beverage. So like an alternate flavor of a beverage. Fulton and I were talking about this during the news. We were talking about lemonade in particular. I said it's a crime that Snapple no longer makes pink lemonade available. And Fulton said, "Oh, are you a pink lemonade guy?" And I said, "Brother, I will drink any lemonade. You put anything in it, I'm going to drink it." Raspberry is at the top.
Yeah.
Favorite flavored drink. This could be your list tomorrow if you want. Or some other day. I'm sure you have a bank of these.
we do. I'll honestly add that to the bank. Pink lemonade might be up there for me. I love pink lemonade. The thing is, like, I don't drink a lot of lemonade. It's not a big thing for me, but if you're going to get me to drink it, making it pink lemonade kind of puts it over the top.
That's the only, like, I drink 3 things. Well, 4. I drink milk, water, lemonade, and orange juice. That's the only beverages I consume.
That tracks.
So yeah, there's a lot of lemonade. Do you have a favorite flavored drink?
I like a strawberry margarita.
Okay.
Ooh, a strawberry margarita
Especially
is
a frozen
great.
one.
Oh yes.
All right, we'll count that.
Like,
Oh,
I'm
yes.
not like like a regular, like, good old fashioned margarita. Usually I just drink those on the rocks, but if I'm getting a frozen margarita, it's probably strawberry.
A frozen strawberry margarita is a very top tier thing to have.
Do you prefer the frozen marg in general?
Not in general. It just kind of depends. Like, I drank a lot of frozen strawberry margaritas on the beach on my honeymoon.
Okay.
Like, I drank a lot.
I thought you said drink at first instead of drank. I thought it was present tense, not past. And I was like, dang, I didn't know you hit the margaritas that hard.
What do you think's in here?
That's what's in Dan's cup every day.
That's where all the energy comes from. All
That's
right.
what it is.
That's why I'm always so lively in the 5 o'clock hour. No, yeah, a little strawberry margarita or a cherry limeade, the Sonic cherry limeade, iconic drink.
Yeah, it's Abby's favorite. Loves cherry limeade. By the way, we've got a comment on YouTube from Vance that says he's surprised that Fulton even came back on with us. Look, last week was very funny.
Oh, it was great.
To us,
I've never
I did
laughed
not
harder.
intend for it to be as hostile as it got.
The Fulton roast session.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I had a great time. I've never laughed harder.
I did have to field a question for my wife. What are sea shanties? And so I played her a selection of the
Okay,
Jolly
I was
Rogers
you
greatest hits.
You should have, Dan. You should have hollered at me. I have a Rolodex of them for you.
we were
Rolodex.
we were sitting around our living room and listening to the Jolly Rogers best of and laughing really, really
They're
hard.
great. Oh, they're fantastic.
Recruited a new fan. Look at that.
Thank you. See,
Okay, look, everything is feeling great. Things are nice and light.
Yes.
Okay. So Jake came into the studio during a commercial break earlier in the show, during the first hour of our show. And I don't even remember what the first thing that came up was, but I was doing the thing where I'm very pedantic. Sometimes it's to get a rise out of people. Sometimes it's because I just want to be right. And Jake said he was going to slap me or yell at me or something. Me and then had a choice word or two for Fulton. And I said, well, what'd Fulton do? And he said, oh, you tell me the Royals aren't mathematically eliminated, even though I said they've got no chance. And apparently you two were arguing about that.
we had a big row over mathematically eliminated the other day.
I am going to open the floor to Fulton here momentarily because we only have 2 hours in the show left.
And if you open it too much, I will take up those 2 hours.
What is the main reason why you have any optimism for the immediate future for the Royals? We're talking like 23-24. What is the overarching umbrella reason why you feel any sort of optimism?
It's very simple for me. They no longer have idiots in charge.
Do we know that?
If you look, and I know the big contending point with any of optimism that's directed towards new coaching staff in place, new executive systems and structures. The contending point is, well, we haven't seen it yet. If you listen to what people in the know say, if you listen to the people around the game and around the league that know a bunch more than every single one of us here, it is nothing but positive things for how Matt Quatraro would go about things leading this team, to how Brian Sweeney will lead things as a pitching coach. And I would say even more so, if you look at what J.J. Picollo has done, and I have been, especially to start this offseason, a very vocal detractor of the non-moves they were making to start.
Ryan Yarbrough didn't move the needle for you?
It was horrendous. And that and when Jordan Lyles announced the signing, I about had a meltdown. But when you watch the things since then, you can see a vision, you can see points and things in place. And the optimism for me comes to this, and it's heavily invested in the pitchers, which is where all the points come to what the potential of this team is. If you watch them pitch in just specific spurts, the talent for so many of these guys exists. If you listen to what people around the league say, there are many who believe you put them in a better organization, they would have succeeded already. There are people who believe you put a guy like Daniel Lynch with the Dodgers, the Guardians, with the Rays, he would have succeeded already because the talent is there. They were just being led by a man who was stuck in 1952. They no longer are. Is
that Eldred or Dayton Moore?
Both,
or
essentially.
Okay.
Mainly Eldred,
Mike
but
Matheny?
both. All three, really.
Okay.
But you look at, Brad Keller spent a good chunk of his offseason at Driveline learning the analytics of pitching and the biomechanical data to try and improve himself. Daniel Lynch has been talking all about how the plans have become personalized, that they're being treated like individuals, that, they're trying to break down the different ways for them all to succeed. I am very understanding and clear that this could all blow up in the face of this team and everything fall apart. But that being said, if you look at just what people are saying and the way things are different, my big overarching point is this. I get why the fan base overall has become apathetic and pessimistic about this team. It's been nothing but bad baseball since 2017 with very, very little glimmers of hope. There's been very small ones, and everything keeps going bad. However, I do not think at this point, with an entirely new regime in place, you should let the old scar tissue prevent you from any iota of hope for this year. And that's what Jake and I got into an argument about today, was he is so scarred by the past 5 years or more, which I get, but this is entirely new. as I even worded earlier on Mic'd Up, the Royals have never been this kind of an organization. They are entering a phase or attempting to enter a phase that they've never been before. So in reality, we don't know what this will look like. Yes, if you want to be a realist and you want to be a level that is, in my opinion, highly negative, it can be just as bad as it's always been. Sure, that is an option that exists. But this is also something we've never seen them try and do. We've never seen them go in this direction. It could work, and I think to a level, it will work.
At a bare minimum, we ought to get a dead cat bounce from this pitching staff, right? I mean, they were dead last in everything you can be ranked in as a pitching staff last season. And a new set of eyes and a new set of ideas should help, because it can't hurt. Like, it can't get worse. Like, it can't get worse than it was last season. Yeah, to that, you've got a little bit more veteran presence in the rotation, in the bullpen, and you're not having to rely on guys who are making their first big league appearances or in their first full big league seasons. There should at least be a little bit of an upward improvement. The other thing I was going to throw out was the American League Central outside of the Guardians does not look like it's going to be all that good this year, but there's less of an advantage to be had there if you're in a less competitive division, because now you play your division opponents less and you play everybody with the new adjusted schedule. But damn it, Fulton, if I'm on your side for any reason, it's this. If you can't be optimistic on February 23rd, then when can you be?
Exactly. Like,
that hope has all spring and summer to be crushed like you crush a paper cup after you're done drinking out of it. Why not let it thrive and let it breathe on February 23rd?
I have made this very clear. I am fully prepared that come May 1st, I'm going to be back to the same person that is just bitter and angry at this team for being terrible and makes me sad. I am very understanding of that reality. But what does it hurt with an entirely new system in place to try to be optimistic and look on the bright side? Why wallow in that negativity just because it's the same way it's always been?
I will say the phrase, and I might not have every word for word here, but there have been glimmers of hope and they've all gone bad is not a great starting point. Just to be fair. I am hopeful that they will get that little bit of a bounce back because they've got new voices in the room. Maybe they'll notice new things. Some guys will just click better with the new staffs. I just don't think this team has enough guys. Like, I just don't think there might be a little bit of a bounce where you can get from 30th to 25th, but I just don't think the talent is there. And at some point you need to have something to build from.
And what I'll say to that is, and this is the part I want to be very clear, I'm not acting like, all of a sudden this team's going to go and become an 85-win playoff team in 1 to 2 years with no changes on this roster. No. But I think if things go right, if you can identify 2 to 3, mainly 2, 3 I think is the real high point if you can. Legitimate 3 to 4 level starters to put in the rotation. If you could get that out of this year, and maybe 1 or 2 guys can be in the pen, and your offense takes the step forward that it should, because those young players have shown even more promise. That's a legitimate point to where if you then go, maybe Sherman opens the checkbook, which we don't know. I understand the reluctancy there. But Sherman likes to say if they're good, he'll spend money. If you take enough steps, and let's say you get near 72, 74 wins, I think that's near their ceiling in reality. If they do, what's to say this team can't be, a couple moves away from then the next year pushing into all right, we're going to try and get to 81, 82 and knock on the doors. Okay, once we do that, go forward. Like, I'm not saying that all of a sudden just changing the leadership is going to take this team to the moon. It's not. I think you're right, Brendan, that they need more guys. Now, I'm also a little bit higher on the potential of a majority of these arms. Jake worded as, the Royals have 10 dudes and they're all bad. That's incorrect. That was the question posed to me to lead off our show.
That's rude, is what it is.
Is he said the Royals' depth is they have they have a lot of arms and none of them are good, which I think is incorrect.
I think they've made a lot of positive steps in the dugout.
Yes.
And I think it's okay to be optimistic over the long haul about how a new approach can help the pitching development in the organization, which is it's a couple years behind the hitting development because they made those steps the last couple of years. They brought in some new voices and some new ideas, and it changed the way that Royals hitters developed. And now you're starting to see the fruits of that come to the major league level with guys like MJ Melendez and Vinny Pasquantino, who, you know, were probably, I mean, Melendez was kind of trending toward being a non-prospect, and then he hit 43 homers in a minor league season, and now he looks like potentially a core piece for the Royals lineup. Vinny Pasquantino, you know, is a middle round draft pick, not a guy that you look at and say that looks like a core piece of our offense for the future. And he might be their best hitter this year. In fact, however you care to measure that, I wouldn't be shocked if he is their best hitter over the course of 162 games. So they've made some positive steps in that direction, and it makes you more hopeful that they can do the same with regards to young pitching. The big question is there still development room for these guys who've had a year or two or three in the major leagues already, or has that window for them to develop into what was hoped kind of passed? Did they just get Brady Singer and a bunch of quad A arms out of that vaunted draft class? If that's the case, then we're going to have to wait a couple of years. But if there's real measurable improvement still out there and guys like Lynch or Heasley make those strides, start to make those strides this year, then yeah, I think then that certainly brightens the long-term outlook.
And that is the crux of this entire season.
I know what your answer is going to be, Fulton. So I will ask Dan right now from, and I don't know which book this is from, but right now, the Royals over-under for wins this year. Have you seen this yet?
No.
Have you seen this?
I've not seen the official number for the total.
I found this from...
I've seen projections, but not the total.
I've seen this from Vegas Insider, and I don't know what sports book officially this is from. 68.5 is the number.
Okay.
Over under. 68.5 wins. So if you just round up and say they get 69 wins, that would be 69 and 93.
Man, it's weird to kind of think about that this year because I have no idea how the more balanced schedule is going to affect teams positively or negatively. I was way off on them last year. I thought they could get to 80 wins. They weren't even close.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah, well, I thought that the pitching would take strides forward, and that, you know, I forgot that Cal Eldred was in charge. I guess I had a brain lapse when I was making my prediction for last season. Forgot who Cal Eldred was, and that he was in charge of all of that pitching development that went to pot over the last, you know, several years.
More like Cal Eldred.
Yes.
That's what I felt every time I saw him.
Every time he made a mound visit,
it
was filled with Eldred.
Eldred mound visit. Well, 2-run double coming up.
It was uncanny.
I don't know. Before, not to cut off the question here, I just want to say someone made a spreadsheet last year of Cal Eldred mound visits and what happened after them. Hitters were hitting over 300 on Royals pitchers after Cal Eldred mound visits.
That's sick.
That was statistically found out. I think I still have that spreadsheet saved somewhere.
My favorite too. My favorite was the they would measure the progress of pitchers, like when they go down to Omaha and then they come back to the major leagues. They like their numbers the first start back from AAA, and then their second start back, and their third start back.
Horrible.
It was like flowers for Algernon.
Yep.
Like they were forgetting how to pitch with further exposure to Cal Eldred.
True.
Have you or a loved one been exposed to Cal Eldred? You may be entitled to financial compensation.
Buddy, let me tell you, I've watched a lot of Cal Eldred coached pitchers.
Yeah.
I feel harmed.
I'm going over. What the hell? Late February is the time for optimism. I think they can win 70 games.
I assume you're going over?
I'm going over. I think they could get to 70.
Man, I think they can get to 70 wins. That is bleak. 70 and 92.
Expectations matter, and it's crazy to think this team is going to get it. But, you know,
I wouldn't touch it. Like I'm not putting any American dollars on that particular line. If it jumps up Like, we have one text from the Big O Tires text line said they've seen it at 69.5. I might be inclined to go under 69.5.
Yeah, I would too.
But-
At that number, I'd go under.
Yeah, but 68.5, I mean, like I said, I want to be optimistic. I genuinely like a lot of the kids are going to roll out there in the lineup. I think they'll hit. Like, I think we're going to see increases in production for Bobby Witt Jr. and MJ Melendez. And even, I mean, we're going to get a full season of Vinny Pasquantino, who I think is going to rake. Like, I think there's some intrigue in the lineup for sure. But, will it be matched with a stride forward every day on the mound? And that's what I don't know. And that's what I don't feel comfortable enough saying, oh, yeah, this team's going to make a big leap this year.
Real quick, we have to get to a commercial break here and get to what is wrong with you after that. Rapid fire. KU wins the Big 12 title outright, wins a share of the Big 12 title, does not win any of it.
Wins it outright.
Wins it outright. So Texas is going to lose at least once and KU wins out.
What if Texas loses twice?
Then KU only needs to win twice as well.
Yeah.
Fact that
But-
KU and Texas still have to play, and I'd pick KU to win that game. I think KU wins it outright.
Tough spot to be in. KU, I think, is going to beat West Virginia this weekend.
Yep.
They'll beat Texas Tech on Tuesday night.
Yep.
KU has won every senior day for 31 years now, 32
Something
years
like-
now.
it's
It's
insane.
preposterous.
Yep.
It really might all come down to that final game, which would
Yep.
be a thriller. But
It'd be great.
You mentioned this earlier. Why would you not take Bill Self in that game?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What logic would indicate that? Tomorrow, mic'd up. What can we look forward to?
We're going to begin our foray into the Chiefs free agency, looking first at what they might do along the defensive line.
Foray.
And then we are going to look at the Royals.
PBS
But
word.
this year, Mike Dipkin on Friday, we will look at the Royals position players and look at how there might not actually be a lot of position battles in spring training and how most of the lineup might actually already be set.
We got to give a quick shout out. The best part of Royals baseball season on this program is the return of the Bard. On the Big O
Yeah,
Tires
that's
text
right.
line.
the Royals bar.
The Royals Bard is back with another Royals limerick.
Hell yes.
Hot off the presses.
Hell yes.
Drew Waters has hurt his oblique. The media outlook is bleak. Young offense has hope. Lose 95? Nope. Unless the pitching springs the leak.
Love it. Welcome back
good.
to the bar.
I'm so happy.
Tremendous stuff.
Man, it feels like spring now.
Yeah, it does. Almost
it
feels
does.
like it's not negative 70 in the building today. Fulton, we appreciate the time. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Happy to be here, guys.
What is wrong with you is up next on 580 Sports Talk. Time for some What is Wrong with You before we get to CJ Moore of The Athletic for the Big 12 basketball breakdown. Our current winner for the week, it is the definitely not dead diagnosis. A couple of paramedics who ruled that a victim was dead. He had passed on. Except he was still breathing and was very much alive the entire time.
His condition was upgraded along the way to not dead.
I just can't get over the fact that this man was breathing. It's not even like, oh man, his lungs stopped working. He was barely alive, but they revived him. No, he was fine. I mean, relatively speaking. Unfathomable. 2 news stories today. I'm going to go first. This story is a lot. It is a lot to deal with. I'm just going to be upfront about that. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office arrested a couple last week for breaking into a woman's home while searching for their dog. 33-year-old Gregory McKnight and 26-year-old Yoselin Rios were charged with home invasion with a firearm for breaking into the home of Michelle Marrero with hopes of taking back their pit bull. According to the arrest report, at 6:25 p.m., Marrero heard a loud bang at her front door, went to open it, and was pushed forcefully back by McKnight, who yelled, "Give me my bleeping dog." The arrest report states that Marrero tried to call McKnight because she knew who he was, but he continued to yell and then began punching the door. As he was punching, Rios walked into the house with a black semi-automatic handgun. She pulled the slide of the gun back, chambered around, pointed the gun at Marrero, and said, "Bleep, give me my dog or I am going to shoot you." Again, this is a lot. The arrest report said Marrero attempted to gain distance from the two of them, but they followed her deeper into the home. She then grabbed her cell phone and tried to hit Rios with it. Then Rios ran out of the house, Marrero chased her, and McKnight ended up hitting her. Obviously not okay. The husband of Marrero, Pagan Rivera, was in attendance and then said to McKnight, the male perpetrator, "Do not take another step." Rios returned to the house, but McKnight told her, "Now we got to get out of here. They're going to call the police on us." The Marrero's daughter was also in attendance. She was in the driveway while all this was going on. That is significant because Marrero's daughter, Jeanette, was in a relationship with McKnight 3 years prior. That's how all these people knew each other. He had previously been dating their daughter. So where does the dog come into play with all of this? Well, according to the arrest report, Marrero told deputies that McKnight's mother used to live next door. And 1 year ago, McKnight said, "Hey, could you hang on to my dog for a little bit?" And she said, "Sure, he can stay here for 1 month." The victim then explained she attempted to contact McKnight numerous times for a whole year about the dog, and McKnight never responded. The victim at this point assumed the rights to the dogs since she spends the time and money taking care of him, and the fact that McKnight appeared to have abandoned the dog. So this guy abandons his dog for a year, is completely untraceable, cannot be contacted, shows up a year later with a gun and says, "Give me my dog or I'm going to shoot you." For his ex-girlfriend's mom, which is who he went to store the dog with.
Yeah, man, that's what's her name? Jeanette. That's Jeanette's dog now.
Oh, big time. Yeah, no, the Marrero family owns that dog. If you say I will hold it for a month, and then it is a whole year
Month
before
turns
you
into
come
a
back,
year, and there's no communication. Nah, man, that's
my dog.
That's their dog.
His name is now Greg, and he's fun to hang out with.
Greg is a good dog name.
Greg is a great dog name.
The best dog names are either like breakfast foods or mundane adult male or female names.
I want to give a dog
like either Howard or Waffles.
I think it's even more extreme to give a dog a name that's really basic. Like, "Oh, this is Tom." Yeah. What do you have for today?
This is Jeff the dog.
Jeff.
Have you met my dog, Steve?
Hi, this is Pete.
Pete's a great dog
Pete
name.
is a good dog name.
All right, we're staying in Florida for this story, if you can believe that. We're going to Altamonte Springs, Florida. How do you feel about the cookies at McDonald's?
Love them. I'd eat 12 right now.
Okay, well, 24-year-old Amari Hendricks also feels very strongly about cookies at McDonald's. So strongly, she pulled a gun over a cookie and is being charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, battery, and resisting arrest. Police say officers were called on February 16th for a report of a woman with a gun in her hand. Officers detained Hendricks and spoke with employees. Hendricks, who herself is a fast food manager, maybe should have had more empathy for these people, went before a judge Friday afternoon. Police say an upset Hendricks thought she was, quote, entitled to a free cookie. Hendricks was even given the free cookie, but continued to argue. So clearly it was more than just the free cookie.
Right.
It was the principle of the whole thing. The next thing McDonald's workers see is that Hendricks allegedly has a handgun while she's in the drive-thru. So they call 911. The report says a worker sees Hendricks insert a magazine into the handgun and rack the slide, then hears clicking sounds associated with someone chambering around. The employees at the drive-thru were in fear. You can only imagine, said Officer Michelle Montalvo. It's a handgun. It would put anybody in fear. The report said Hendricks did point the firearm toward the drive-thru window. One worker said he could see down the barrel. Police say Hendricks drove out of the drive-thru, parked, walked to the door. A worker tried to lock her out but failed, and they got into a physical altercation, leaving the worker with scratches on his face and neck. Hendricks was pulled over a block from the scene. A loaded gun was found on the driver's side floorboards. Police say Hendricks was ultimately taken into custody after initially refusing to comply with officer commands. She's also prohibited by the court from returning to that McDonald's if she bonds out.
All right, this wins today because this is definitely the funnier gun story than the people going nuts over a dog that they abandoned. So this gets my vote for today.
I agree.
This is very funny. I do like their cookies, but also, bro, they're $1.
I wonder why she felt like she was entitled to the free cookie.
That's a detail that I think is lacking here. Why? Why was she entitled to this?
I want my free cookie. And the workers were like, okay, here is your free cookie. And somehow that wasn't good enough.
Does that beat, though, the definitely not dead diagnosis?
No, I think that is going to, ironically, survive for another day.
We'll let that be the mic drop moment. That is the winner again today. And what is wrong with you? We'll get to a break. CJ Moore's next here on 580 Sports Talk. CJ Moore of The Athletic joins us on 580 Sports Talk every Thursday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour during the Big 12 basketball season. For the Big 12 Breakdown, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence, a fantastic place to have a great meal, have some beer, and watch a game, including KU West Virginia coming up on Saturday. How are you, CJ? How you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We are doing well. A lot of basketball to get to, so let's just jump right into it. And let's start with those Kansas Jayhawks who are playing what appears to me to be their best basketball of the season. An incredible, truly remarkable win over Baylor on Saturday. Obviously, an impressive, albeit not the most aesthetically pleasing win over TCU on Monday night as well, down in Fort Worth. Would you agree with that statement, CJ, that right now this is the best KU has looked all season?
Yeah, I think so. This last handful of games, I think that Jayhawks have really found something on the defensive end with, and DeJuan Harris and Kevin McCullough having two stoppers. like, on Monday being able to shut down basically Mike Miles and Damian Baugh in that game, and the game before being able to second half being able to shut down Adam Flagler and LJ Cryer. That's a huge weapon. And then I think the emergence of Ernest Uday is taking the KU defense to another level. So I think defensively they're playing excellent, and DeJuan Harris has kind of come back around to the guy he was before that little losing streak, and he's playing great basketball. So I think Grady Dick's shooting, starting to score again. So basically everything that like Bill Self would want, I think is happening recently.
McCullough in particular, I mean, he has looked so good these last couple of games. And I know Bill Self mentioned today that, yeah, he's not the kind of guy who thrives on jump shots. And I know you and I have talked about that before, that not always huge fans of him taking threes or whatever pull-up jumpers. But when he's going downhill offensively, it works. And defensively, he has just been remarkable as of late. Is there anything you've noticed, whether it's actual, on the court things that have changed, or maybe it's just a level of confidence, but what has gotten him to this level he's playing at right now where, I mean, he looks like he might be the best defensive player in the country over these last couple of games?
I think just comfort. Like it just takes a while sometimes to get comfortable in the system. They play defensively different than he played at Texas Tech. On the ball, at KU, you're keeping it in front of you. At Texas Tech, you're forcing it baseline. So I think he's gotten comfortable and kind of being, nobody's going to get past me. He's excellent off the ball because you have to do so much off the ball and in the no middle defense, and he got so good at that at Texas Tech. So, he's really, really good on the ball. He's probably even better off it. And then, offensively, just kind of finding his spots where he can score in KU's offense. I think he's a really good cutter. And you're seeing more of that lately. He kind of is figuring out when to cut, and that's I think the other day that really benefited him.
Our guest is CJ Moore of The Athletic. He joins us on Thursdays here on the program for the Big 12 Basketball Breakdown presented by 23rd Street Brewery of Lawrence. A great place to watch the Jayhawks, the Wildcats, any Big 12 basketball action, or truly any major sporting event. Enjoy a delicious meal, one of their micro brews, or anything else. The 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence, sponsor of the Big 12 Basketball Breakdown. CJ, let's talk about K-State. 2 wins on the bounce for the Wildcats at home, taking down Iowa State last Saturday and then beating Baylor on Tuesday, and doing so with excellent second half efforts. Is it as simple as just a little home cooking doing K-State well, or have they done something to get themselves back on track that goes beyond that?
I think obviously being at home helps. I think last week we talked about Cam Carter and how he'd had 2 goose eggs back to back. He scored 16 points in the last 2 games combined, so that helps. Desi Sills as well. I feel like he's had more of a presence. Looking here, he hasn't put up huge offensive games, but he's played. He's moved into the starting lineup, and his assist numbers are up, and maybe that's given their offense a little bit boost. But I just think it kind of just comes down to, you go in ebbs and flows in this conference. And like Baylor looked tired the other night. I heard Fran say that, and I think that's true. And, K-State might have hit a little funk where it was a little mental, physical exhaustion, and just had a lot more life in the Wildcats' legs the other day than the Bears did.
How much impact do you think Desi Sills being in the starting lineup those 2 games has in terms of how Kansas State plays on offense, and particularly how much more efficient they can be taking care of the ball on that side?
Yeah, he's another handler. He's a better secondary handler than Cam is. I think. While his shooting numbers aren't good, he is somebody that you have to respect from the 3-point line. So maybe, the gravity of the floor, he demands a little bit more attention. So I think he's more of an offensive threat than Cam. And that might be an area where you don't put so much on Marquise to do everything. You have, another guy that can kind of go create for people.
Speaking of Baylor, they were maybe the hottest team in the conference before they went on their Sunflower State road trip and lost at Allen Fieldhouse and lost at Bramlage Coliseum. Their ceiling to me still seems very high, but was it strictly fatigue to you, or are there some weaknesses with this Baylor roster and the way that they play that could maybe haunt them in March?
Yeah, their defense is a problem. It's by far the worst in the Big 12. They're not great keeping the ball in front of them, and then they don't have great rim protection. I mean, Flo Thamba is just kind of an average center. Jonathan Chama, I love him, and I'm so glad that young man is back on the floor. He just can't move like he used to be able to, and so there's ways you can exploit them on the defensive end. And they're a team that just kind of has to outscore you, and it's hard to do that every game. And I think they ran into two good defensive teams in Kansas and Kansas State that know their stuff and kind of schematically figured out ways to slow them down. And it's tough when you're in this conference and you're relying on just your offense. You got to be a little bit more balanced, and so that's my worry for Baylor. Going forward, they're still a team that could get hot in the tournament with the guards they have, but that defense, I think they need to figure out something. And Scott Drews, he's trying, he's mixing in some zone, doing some different stuff, but man, nothing really worked that second half against KU or on the other day against K-State.
This is the Big 12 basketball breakdown on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence, as we're chatting with CJ Moore from The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter at CJ Moore Hoops. And, of course, check out all of his tremendous work over at The Athletic and theathletic.com. To that point about the Baylor defense, CJ, because Dan and I were saying the other day, going into the K-State game, that we both still think that the ceiling for this Baylor team, with how good they are offensively and how good that trio of guards is, could still be a Final Four ceiling. But if they're going to give up easy buckets in the paint constantly, I can't imagine they get to that point. So is there anything you've noticed or you think might work to at least aid on that end a little bit? I know that, look, you can only do so much with a player who can't move like he used to. And, you're not going to suddenly get an injection of more talent into Flo Thamba, for example. But is there something more they can do defensively to try to keep guys in front of them better or just do something else? You mentioned Scott Drew's trying to mix in some zone and some other things. Do you have any ideas of what could be done to try to fix that particular issue, or at least part of it?
Well, I think I would, they're a team that does guard the 3-point line a little bit, but I'd maybe be more willing to give up more threes and play more of a pack line type defense where you're trying to play in gaps and, just keep the ball out of the paint. I think that's what they have to do because, they can't really extend defensively because if they get extended, they're just not very good at keeping the ball in front of them. So I think they have to kind of, make teams play in crowds, be willing to give up some threes. If I was coaching that team, I think that's what I would do. Would probably be change my scheme up a little bit and just try to jam up the paint as much as I can.
One other team that we haven't addressed yet that I'm very curious your take about, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. It looked for a minute like they were the hottest team in the league. They win 5 games in a row. They were playing these super competitive games. Their defense was absolutely tremendous. I know it was top 10 in the country, at least from the Ken Pomeroy numbers. Now they've hit the skids ever since then. 3 losses in a row, a couple of pretty ugly losses in the process there. I feel like Oklahoma State and West Virginia, while they might not be crazy similar, they've given me a similar thought this year that I just don't really know what they are. Are they good but struggling, or are they bad but they got hot? I'm just really not sure what to make of them. I think they're a tournament team, but I'm not sure if they're one that you actually need to be scared of or if they're just kind of a team that got lucky for a while.
I think they're just a middle of the pack Big 12 teams that they're going to go through these spurts where they don't look very good. And, let's look at this. Let's just look at this 3-game sample, right? Like, I watched the Kansas game, and honestly, that's the only one of the 3 I've watched. But I thought they played pretty well in the Kansas game. You could argue that was about as well as KU played all year, right? Like, didn't you guys think KU was tremendous in that game?
Can you repeat that, CJ? I missed you there for a sec.
Didn't you all think Kansas was tremendous in that Valentine's Day game?
Oh, yeah.
Stillwater. I thought
second
it was
half,
one of the best games KU played.
No doubt. And that was really when McCullough started taking off, too.
Yeah, so you lose that game, and no shame in that. You're losing to likely the Big 12 champs who played one of their best games of the year. Then the next game, you come and you go to TCU, and TCU's getting back Mike Miles and has its full roster again. And TCU is one of those teams that when it gets out running, like they can blow your doors off. They blew out Kansas. They've blown out some really good teams. And so they caught TCU on the wrong game. And then, you go to West Virginia, and shoot, that's the hardest road trip to make in this league because it's not, farthest trip. And I losing that badly to West Virginia is a little troubling, but West Virginia's had some games like that this year. So I didn't watch that one, so it's hard to say. Oklahoma State's a team that I think defensively is really good. I thought offensively was starting to figure some stuff out, but still, it's just not a very good shooting team. So it's going to be up and down. And but yeah, it's a team in the NCAA tournament. I could see making a Sweet 16. I could see losing in the first round. I think there's for like teams like West Virginia, Oklahoma State, there's a wide range of outcomes that we could see in March.
CJ, 2 questions about all Big 12 honors. Did Mike Miles miss too many games to be considered first team all Big 12? And is K-State going to land maybe 2 guys on first team all Big 12?
Yeah, it's hard, man. Like I haven't sat down and tried to decide who I would put on there. But yeah, I think K-State's got it. Like it depends on how K-State finishes, I think. But there's a real chance, the Cats could get 2 on there. And it depends how TCU and Mike Miles finish too. Probably like if he goes out here and just kills it his last few games, and the fact that they lost almost all their they only won 1 game when he was out, like shows how much value he has. I could see him still getting on the first team of the Big 12, but it's tough. I mean, basically, I think you probably just take the big guys out and let's just call Keontae Johnson in the center or Jaden Wilson in the center and put like all perimeter guys on there.
Last thing I've got for you, CJ, before we let you go, and appreciate your time as always. This is a non-Big 12 question, and it's a super difficult situation going down in Alabama and Tuscaloosa. And I'm not going to ask you to play lawyer or judge or anything with the actual case that's being investigated. But can you believe still a couple of days later how Nate Oates handled the situation in front of the media, talking about Brandon Miller and the investigation? I mean, we were floored when that happened the other day. I mean, could you believe the way he reacted to that initially?
I kept rereading the story and then listening to that clip and trying to understand how he got there. And I couldn't understand it. Like if either he, they say he went into that like not prepared, like just kind of got thrown out. But like I don't see how you don't prepare for that situation if you're an athletic department. The media guy did his job really poorly, but also like Nate Oates just has to have a better sense of reading the room type thing, right? So it was just a colossal failure on their part. It's really, really sad. I can't imagine if I was related, to the young lady that lost her life. If I'm a relative of hers and I heard that, wrong place, wrong time, like I'd just be so angry. So, it was bad all around.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable situation. And I know that they're going to focus on basketball down there, but man, I can't imagine it gets all that much better in the near future. CJ, we appreciate all of the insight on the Big 12 and everything going on around college basketball. Make sure you're checking out CJ Moore's work over at theathletic.com. And of course, follow him on Twitter at CJ Moore Hoops. We appreciate the time, CJ, and we will talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That is CJ Moore from The Athletic. Tremendous stuff as always. He's spoken to the media multiple times since then, and I can't get over it. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, man?
Yeah. And there is a piece today at AL.com that details just how the family of the woman who was killed feels about this whole scenario, that they are incandescent with anger, that Nate Oates has time to pick up the phone and call Ray Lewis, but hasn't taken the time to pick up the phone and call the victim's family.
Yeah.
It's just been handled so poorly by Nate Oates.
It is always okay if you don't know what's going on to just say, I can't answer that right now. That is always okay. News is coming up next. National and local will lead off the 5 o'clock hour with headlines coming up on 580 Sports Talk. now, 5 o'clock hour, just getting started on 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero, and we're here with you for another hour here on the Sports Voice of Kansas and on YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW. We've got headlines. We've got some NFL talk, a little college basketball best bets action. It's all coming up here in this hour of 580 Sports Talk. Thank you so much for stopping by today. If you've missed any of the show up until this point, like the Big 12 breakdown with CJ Moore of The Athletic, the Invista Credit Union High School whip around with Rick Peterson, or anything else we've been talking about over the course of the show today, Fulton being as optimistic as humanly possible about the Kansas City Royals, you can check it all out on our website, 580WIBW.com. Hover your cursor over the podcasts tab. Menu will pop up. Click on 580 Sports Talk. Click on that, and then you will find the hour-by-hour podcast version of the show from today. We would love to get your takes on whatever we're talking about here in this 5 o'clock hour of the show as well. The Big O Tires text line number is 785-272-9429, and you can jump into the comment section on YouTube as well. Again, our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you are always ready to go. You just go to youtube.com. As soon as we are ready to go on the live stream, it'll be right there on your homepage. Easiest way to find those every single day that we are live for both 580 Sports Talk and for Mic'd Up. Let's get right into it with our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. Brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. You can visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. My first headline involves a rival team, a team that many people, including yourself, many people in our area, do not like, maybe even hate, the Denver Broncos. But the Denver Broncos have done something today that I will applaud them for. No, it was not hiring Joe Lombardi. For that, they deserve nothing but condemnation. They should be laughed at forever for hiring Joe Lombardi today for some offensive role. But friend of the program, former co-host of Mondays with Mike on 580 Sports Talk, Washburn great Michael Wilhoit today was hired as the outside linebackers coach for the Denver Broncos. He was previously, most recently, the linebackers coach for the Los Angeles Chargers and had previously worked for the New Orleans Saints for a couple of years in a multitude of different roles. Now, there is a connection there, obviously. Sean Payton, new head coach in Denver. And according to my sources, Sean Payton and Michael Wilhoit pretty tight from their days in New Orleans. So super cool for Michael Wilhoit. The Broncos announced a ton of staff additions today for Sean Payton's first staff in Denver. Super cool for Michael Wilhoit. I guess I'm not shocked that things ended in Los Angeles, but realistically, and I'm not just saying this because Mike is our guy, the linebackers were the least of the Chargers' problems on defense last year. Michael Wilhoit did not draft Kenneth Murray and have him become a pumpkin, okay? Like, the secondary, terrible. The defensive line, bad outside of Joey Bosa.
Yeah, like the linebackers were kind of okay. Like, Drew Tranquil's a good player. Kyle Van Noy was signed, and I mean, he was impactful in the games I saw him play.
Kaiser White had a good season.
Yeah.
That
Tranquil and White, by the way, free agents.
Interesting. Very interesting. I wonder if Denver might be interested in those particular free agents.
Wonder if they might be, because Lord knows they could use a playmaker at linebacker or two.
Yeah, no kidding. But no, that is super cool for Mike. He's such an awesome guy. He's a great dude, a lot of fun. Obviously a friend of ours here, former intern at the station. Again, when we used to do Mondays with Mike, that was the best. That was the most fun thing we ever did, was having Mike on for a full hour every Monday.
That was super cool.
That was awesome. But no, super happy for Michael Wilhoit. Obviously, Topeka means a lot to him. He means a lot to Topeka, to the Highland Park neighborhood in particular. And no, that is super cool for the former Ichabod 7-year NFL vet. And of course, the Topeka legend, Michael Wilhoit, new outside linebackers coach of the Denver Broncos.
Very, very cool for him. And I should also mention that among other hires that the Broncos have made, they hired a defensive coordinator today. And it is a familiar face because he used to be the head coach of the Denver Broncos. Vance Joseph is returning as the defensive coordinator after spending the last 2 years the last 4 years as the defensive coordinator in Arizona.
Wow, was it that long?
Well, hold on. Let me do the math.
Yeah, because Fangio spent 3.
Yeah, it was 3 for Fangio.
And then 1 for Hackett.
Yeah, 1 for Hackett. So,
wow.
Yeah, 4
Sergio
years.
Dip was that long ago, huh?
Yes, it was. 4 years as the defensive coordinator in Arizona after spending 2 ill-fated years as the head coach of the Denver Broncos. So he returns as a defensive coordinator, with Bronco fans everywhere shrugging their shoulders and saying, hey, it worked when we did this with Wade Phillips. Now, is Vance Joseph a Wade Phillips caliber defensive mind? Few are.
Yeah.
Let's say that. But Vance Joseph has done some good things. 2 years ago, his defense was 11th in the league in scoring and yards, scoring defense and total defense. That was despite having like no good players on that defense. So Vance Joseph, he's the new defensive coordinator. You mentioned that Joe Lombardi, formerly the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers, who the Chargers were delighted to get rid of, I would imagine, by the end of the season. He is going to fill a role on the offensive staff. It may be offensive coordinator, though, of course, when Sean Payton is your head coach, he's the boss.
He shouldn't be towel boy. He should be assistant associate to the towel boy. Like, stop hiring this guy. Some of the worst years of Drew Brees' time with Sean Payton were when Joe Lombardi was their quarterbacks coach. Why would you hire this guy? He couldn't make it work with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson. He couldn't make it work with Justin Herbert. What makes Sean Payton think, no, I couldn't fix him the first time, but this time I'll fix him? It drives me insane. How does this guy keep getting jobs? It's not even failing upward, though. It's just the same job he keeps getting hired for. Oh, well, you couldn't mop up this Burger King at, the last 12 places you tried. Maybe you can mop up this Burger King. No, you can't do it. At some point, you're just bad at it. It is just unbelievable. And Joe Lombardi keeps getting jobs. I'm happy for Michael Wilhoit. Obviously, everything else pertaining to the Denver Broncos. Goodness gracious. Let's get to some other NFL news and notes here while we are talking about the National Football League. These are our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Don't forget to check out their website, blue.kansas.com. First things first, this is just coming out fairly recently. Ari Mirov of the 33rd team, he's their NFL insider. I don't really know where he came from. He kind of just got famous by going on Twitter and reposting everything Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport said. And then a million people followed him and a real company ended up hiring him. It was PFF. Now it's 33rd team. Doesn't matter. He's an NFL insider. He posted a video on Twitter today talking about the situation with DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona. And after 3 years with the Cardinals, it sounds like he is probably getting moved. This has sort of been the expectation for a while, but Mirov did put out there today that the league-wide expectation is that DeAndre Hopkins is going to get dealt. Here's the full quote, in fact. The league-wide expectation is that he's going to be dealt at some point this offseason. So that could be before free agency, that could be before the draft, but after the start of the new league year, maybe it even comes after the draft when teams are more aware of what their needs are certainly going to be for the upcoming season. I would figure it would be before the draft so that you can move immediate compensation to Arizona. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Cardinals coming up here in just a little bit. We're going to do a little bit on roster stability around the NFL, the teams that have the most stable roster situations and the teams that are currently in a spot where, oh my God, it might be a complete disaster zone going forward. But Arizona, I think, is in the worst spot of maybe any team in the NFL. And Dan, we were just talking about how it looks now like for certain DeAndre Hopkins is going to get moved. Ari Mirov of the 33rd team reported that today, that around the league, that's the expectation. He'll get moved at some point this offseason. I don't think that's a surprise at all. I am curious where he ends up. I'm curious what he fetches, honestly. Coming off of a PED suspension, had a great year once he returned, but he's now on the quote-unquote wrong side of 30. And if he's not doing PEDs anymore, who knows what that's going to lead to? Somewhat joking, but also somewhat not. I don't know what he's going to fetch, but I would imagine sometime between the start of free agency and the NFL draft is when we'll see him get moved. That's what I would think anyway.
Yeah, and I think he'll be in demand. Like, even though he only played but a handful of games last season and had a bunch of bums thrown in the football, he was still very productive and very clear that if you make him the focal point of your passing game, or if he's your wide receiver one, he's still going to be able to produce, I think, at that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Like you said, it was either yesterday or Tuesday. This dude was putting up numbers with David Blau and folks throwing to him. Who was the other? Trace McSorley.
Yeah, Trace McSorley.
Like, he still put up numbers. That's fine. The other NFL note we should get to, there's a couple we should get to. One is more annoying than the other. The less annoying one, fairly big news, is Bobby Wagner and the Los Angeles Rams have agreed to mutually part ways. You don't often see that with players, maybe with a quarterback once in a while. You don't see that with linebackers, though, especially an all-time great like Bobby Wagner. Apparently, he has some different ideas of what he wants to do with his future. The Rams have some major cap concern. Wow, shocking. The team that got rid of all their picks and signed a bunch of all-pros and made big trades and stuff suddenly need to clear cap space. You win a Super Bowl, there are downsides on the back end of it sometimes. So he is leaving Los Angeles. That's going to save the Rams, I think I saw around $8 million or so against the cap this year. I think most teams, not all, like the Chiefs, I don't think would be interested because they've got young, good linebackers, and they usually try to get younger at every spot that isn't defensive end, really. But I think most teams around the NFL, if they don't have a spot, they should be able to find a spot now, even for an older Bobby Wagner. Still a stud of a player. He had a great couple of years, or was it just 1 year with the Rams? I guess it was just one season.
Yeah,
but it was
1
a
year.
damn good year.
All pro.
Yeah, it was a hell of a year. He's still got some juice left. And the way Adam Schefter worded it on Twitter was extremely funny. He said, Bobby Wagner wants to win and the Rams need cap space. So I guess there was no way to work out a deal there. He just figured I'll have to go win elsewhere, which based on the Rams season this year, I'm not surprised. But no, I think there's probably 25 teams in the NFL who would say, yeah, we could use that guy to improve. Absolutely. Hell, you know who could use some help? We were just talking about their defense. Chargers should go make a move. They need some help. They need some surefire tacklers. He wouldn't even have to move.
Hey, if he wants to win and there's a team with a vacancy because of a late season injury at linebacker that's going to cost Jordan Brooks some time probably next season, what about a reunion with the Seahawks?
Could happen.
I wouldn't be upset. I know that much. I know things didn't end great with the Seahawks as far as like their informing of Bobby Wagner that he was not going to play for them anymore last year anyhow, but maybe that could be patched up and maybe that could be made better, made whole.
Did he have beef with Russell Wilson?
Not any more or less than anybody else did.
Okay. I was going to say, maybe that would be a selling point to him returning.
Right.
What's your next headline for us here on our Blue Dot headlines?
Continuing with our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines, there's not a whole lot going on today in the world of sports, to be completely honest with you. But another note from football is Eric Bieniemy had his introductory press conference with the Washington Commanders today as he was introduced as their new offensive coordinator. And he was asked questions about being a head coach in the future. And what he told the media today was, quote, being a head coach right now is not in my thought process. What I'm focused on is being the best coach today. Everything else will take care of itself. I live in the moment. Right now, my feet are planted here. All that stuff about being a head coach, we could talk about that next year sometime. I'm focused on the job at hand. He was also asked about the opportunity in Washington. He says, quote, look at all the talent. I'm excited about this opportunity. I have no doubt about what they're building here. I've never backed down from a challenge. His quotes about Kansas City. He had a line. He was asked about leaving Kansas City. We've had a great deal of success. I was blessed and fortunate to have that opportunity and share that space with some amazing people. But one thing in this profession, you learn that comfort is the enemy of progress. So when it's all said and done with, I don't like being comfortable. I'm about accepting challenges and moving forward. This presents a challenge to me. Certainly, if they're going to saddle him with Sam Howell at quarterback, it is absolutely a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if he ends up looking like a real NFL starting quarterback, then hey, it clearly shows that Bieniemy knew what he was doing and knows what he is doing. But look, I appreciate his professionalism throughout this entire thing a great deal. I really do. Best of luck to Washington. Nobody wins in this situation more than the Washington Commanders do. And frankly, Sam Howell, because he's going to end up with a guy who knows what success looks like, who has been a coordinator, if not a play caller, but a coordinator for really good offenses for years and years now. They make out like bandits here, and I applaud the professionalism of Eric Bieniemy because he could be very bitter about this. He could say, yeah, I've been screwed. I'm not going to sue the league, but I probably could. Like that. He's probably one step shy of that at this point, at least having the justification to think about it. So, tough situation for him. Honestly.
You know, I kind of like their skill talent. The more I think about it, so like Brian Robinson, I think is a good player.
I think so too.
Terry McLaurin is
Bona fide number one.
Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, pretty nice weapons.
Tommy Brown has had a couple moments the last 2 years.
I don't know if they're going to bring Antonio Gibson back.
I'm not sure. That the running back room is a little bit of an interesting case. But then when he's been healthy, which hasn't been always, and I'm not sure his contract status, Logan Thomas has been a nice player. I'm not sure if he's a free agent though. Yeah, he's been in with Washington for the last 3 years.
A question from the Big O Tires text line in regards to the quarterback situation for Eric Bieniemy in Washington asked why not Taylor Heineke, who took over midseason last year and provided a spark, I think, for a Washington team that very quickly was realizing that Carson Wentz was not it. I think that Taylor Heineke's ceiling is backup, and I think that Washington feels the very same way. And if they did not, they would not have given Sam Howell the audition that they gave him in the final week of last season. And I don't think it's an accident that Howell was at the press conference today.
Yes, that is significant. I think being a long-term backup is, like, honestly, if you have a quarterback go down and your backup option is Taylor Heineke, you could do a lot worse. He's going to throw some really stupid passes, but he's going to do enough too that he can help you win. I mean, he kept Washington in the playoff race for at least a while this year. And, I mean, should he be starting for a playoff contender? No, I don't think he's good enough for that. But can he be kind of the spark plug that, hey, we need you for 6 weeks. We need you to keep this thing afloat? He can do that. I think that's fine. He'll land on his feet somewhere. Honestly, you know what I think would make a decent amount of sense for him as a backup? Well, it depends on Purdy's health. I think San Francisco actually makes a lot of sense. He's not big, which is what San Francisco would like out of their quarterback, so he's not going to run a whole lot, but Jimmy didn't run either. Trey Lance has been banged up a bit. He missed all of this season. Brock Purdy is going to miss some amount of time because of his elbow surgery. Why not bring a guy in there and say, Taylor, you are going to throw 10 passes a game, no more, no less. 8 of them are going to go to Deebo Samuel, and the other 2 are going to George Kittle. Do not just throw to those guys and don't do anything else. That's all you have to do. Niners could win 10 or 11 games with that. Honestly, they could do a lot worse because they need a backup, and it ain't going to be Josh Johnson. So they could use some more help there, and it ain't going to be Jimmy either. He'll land on his feet somewhere, though. He had a quote Heineke did the other day where he's like, yeah, I mean, I would like to start, but there's a lot worse you could be than a backup quarterback.
That's fact.
By the way, did you know that Eric Bieniemy holds an NFL record?
I did not know that.
Eric Bieniemy has the NFL record. I knew this before. I have his stats up in front of me to confirm it, though. The most catches in a career with no touchdown receptions.
Really?
Eric Bieniemy made 146 catches as an NFL running back over the course of 9 seasons. 146. None of them were for touchdowns.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
The NFL record.
Huh.
He started 1 game in his career. He was backup running back. He spent 9 years in the league as a backup running back. It's actually pretty nice. He only had 11 touchdowns, period. But yeah, none of them through the air.
Wow.
Yeah. Had 193 targets. He was a pretty good receiving back at one point in time.
Yeah.
Third down back kind of player.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to get to this. We've mostly made this an NFL headlines segment. This is something we have to get to, even though the story, I think, is continually blown out of proportion. Aaron Rodgers left his hovel today.
Emerged from the darkness.
That's literally how the story at ESPN starts. Aaron Rodgers has emerged from his darkness retreat, according to the over of the facility in Southern Oregon, where he spent several days and nights. Juan Thai over at ESPN, in investigative writer for them, put together a whole piece on this place where he was staying and like what it entails and all the things you do or do not have there. It's very odd. If that's what you're into, more power to you. I find it to be odd, but hey, different strokes for different folks. So now the NFL offseason can progress, and the Jets will likely make an offer for him. There was a report today the Raiders will not be making an offer for him, which is interesting. I don't know what is going to end up happening. I'm sort of over the whole story. I think he already knows if he wants to play or not. I think that has been decided since the season ended, to be completely honest with you. I think this was just him being him, which is
enjoying the attention.
Yeah.
I think more and more he enjoys the attention and enjoys being the topic of these rumors and conjecture and conspiracy theories. I think it's a kick out of this.
I think he enjoys the part where he controls things. Like,
yeah,
he gets people to, we have to wait for him to do this. We have to wait for his decision here or there. Because he's always been into like Twitter trolling. He and Davante Adams have done that together for years and years, since Davante was pretty young. And, you know, the Raiders stuff, or in the past, it was the whole Last Dance thing, all that nonsense. I think he's kind of developed into, you know, he did the Pat McAfee show and man, people tune in every week to listen to me talk. And I kind of a tastemaker now. And then it was, well, what if I do this outside of my talk show appearance? And people are always hanging on my every word. And guess what? It worked. All the time it's working. It's very, very strange. But he is now back to the light. He has emerged, and the NFL offseason can continue.
I feel a little bit defrauded in the course of this story. That's probably an awkward way to put it, but his darkness retreat had like a light switch.
Yes, he could have turned the light on at any point.
Yes, he had full control over whether or not there was any light.
The guy who owns the place, and I can only imagine how much this costs. A disgusting amount, I'm sure. The guy who owns the place comes by with a meal and to check in every day. And he said in this story at ESPN, well, sometimes I'll stop by for 10 seconds, just say, you good? And I'll leave. And sometimes we'll talk for 20 minutes. I thought the whole thing was you're all alone in the dark.
Right.
Face down on the floor. Whatever the hell he was
meditating
doing.
Or
you got a queen size bed. How much self-reflection can you do when you've got more comfort than I do? Come on.
jeez.
Unbelievable. Any other headlines for you today, Dan?
No, that'll do it.
That'll take us then to our first commercial break. Big shout out, as always, to Blue Dot for sponsoring our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Go visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. Coming up on the other side of this timeout, how stable is the Chiefs roster relative to the rest of the NFL, especially relative to other contenders for a Super Bowl? You'll be shocked to hear they're in pretty good shape. We'll explain that coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. here with you on 580 Sports Talk on this Thursday, February 23rd. Thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with us today. We've got high school basketball coming up tonight. Special edition 580 Preps Thursday night hoops here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Single game. It's a boys game coming up from Hayden tonight. 4A action as Hayden, the number 10 team in Class 4A, takes on Eudora, the number 3 team in Class 4A per the KBCA poll. Pregame will begin at approximately 7:15 with game tip-off time set for 7:30. Again, just a single boys game, so the day is going to start a little bit later. They got Winter Royalty tonight, but 7:30 approximate start time with yours truly and Larry Latimer tonight here on 580 WIBW. Should be a fun one. Final game of the regular season for Hayden, a rematch from the quarterfinals of 4A State in Salina 1 year ago. I was thinking about this earlier today, Dan, the Chiefs roster, because I was thinking about what they're going to do with their draft picks this year and the pieces they'll need to fill in. And the fact that the Chiefs probably aren't going to be picking anywhere inside the top 28 for a long time. I mean, what is it? Super Bowl teams are 32-31 generally. Conference championship teams are 30-29 generally. I expect the Chiefs to be there pretty much every year. I have no reason to believe they can't get approximately that far pretty much every year with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So it's going to be a while before the Chiefs have a high draft pick or even a not bottom of the first round draft pick again, in all likelihood. But I was thinking about the fact that the Chiefs are still in a very enviable spot, that they've got a ton of picks this year. And they've got most of their roster put together and at least their most important core pieces locked in for now. And how many other teams in the NFL can say they are in as good of a position roster-wise as the Chiefs are? You've got the quarterback. Not just, oh, yeah, we got the guy. No, you've got the quarterback, the guy. You've got a Hall of Fame coach. You've got an elite playmaker in Travis Kelce. You're going to have to figure out the wide receiver spots. That's for sure. We've got a running game that is at least serviceable enough that you can work with the rest of the offense. A tremendous offensive line. And no matter what happens with the tackles, you're always going to have with that group of Humphrey, Smith, and Tooney on the inside an elite offensive line. And you've got a young, solid defensive core. I assume you're going to re-sign Chris Jones. You've got young linebackers that look better consistently, who both starters anyway, Gay and Bolton, played very well in the Super Bowl overall. You've got a secondary that you have some questions, maybe depth-wise and maybe at safety, but your corners look like they're going to be really good for a long time, and they're super young. L'Jarius Sneed's the veteran. He's only been in the league for 3 years. Jalen Watson was great as a rookie. Joshua Williams had his moments. Trent McDuffie obviously played really well. Is there any other team in the NFL that comes even close to this? And before we even get to that, let's also take a moment to recognize how big of a deal that is to have that much stability after a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to this past season. Who are the defending champions?
The Los Angeles Rams.
The Rams, granted, had to deal with injuries. Injuries are unfortunate. They're part of the game. That can derail an entire season. It happened to Cooper Kupp. It happened to Matthew Stafford. Obviously, that's going to throw things off. They sucked. Even when those guys were out there, they were not good.
Mm-hmm.
They got their brains beaten in the first Thursday of the season. And I think most people thought, okay, this is more about the Bills being who we thought they were than anything about the Rams. They'll be fine. Well, they were not fine. And then Kupp got hurt and they still sucked. And then Stafford got hurt and they were turbo sucky. I mean, they were just horrible all year long. And now they've got to get rid of all pros after 1 year because they don't have cap space. They don't really know what the long-term future is going to look like at quarterback because Stafford can't play forever. Kupp's going to be coming off of a severe injury. Their defense isn't getting any younger. Their best player has sort of flirted with retiring multiple years in a row now. It's hard to keep a championship roster intact and to stay a contender year after year after year. It's amazing that the Chiefs are in this spot, and I don't know if anyone else truly is in this same kind of position no matter what they won this past season.
You know, it's not too dissimilar. They brought a lot back from the first Super Bowl team, the Chiefs, if you remember.
They brought back all 22 starters.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that level of continuity is really, really difficult to maintain. And it's a testament to the job that Brett Veach has done and the work they've done through the draft, that they've been able to do this with a lot of homegrown guys. And homegrown guys that are still on that first contract. So you don't have that churn where you have guys that are starting to break out, but it's year 4 or it's year 5, and now they're hitting the free agent market. And, you know, those guys who might be cornerback number 3 or wide receiver number 3 or running back number 2 kind of start looking like number 1s to lesser teams, and they get paid like number 1s by those lesser teams in free agency. So you lose some of that depth. You lose some of that homegrown talent. That's generally what happens to Super Bowl teams. It's not what's going to happen to these Chiefs because they've done so well in these last couple of drafts. And they're going to have that eventually. They're going to run into that where Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith and Nick Bolton are all going to hit free agency together, right? And this group of players, this recent group of draftees, they're all going to hit free agency together.
Next year is when it does start to get a little more really real, because that's when Humphrey and Smith come up, and Bolton from that tremendous draft class.
And as a texter points out from the 785 and the Big O Tires text line, it's rare to have a Super Bowl champion get this much out of guys who are rookies.
Oh, for sure. Super weird. Not even unusual. It's weird. You almost never see that. Teams that rely on rookies a lot, generally, it's because they got rid of all their veterans and they're trying to build from the ground up.
I read an interview with Nick Wright from Fox Sports, Kansas Cityan, Chiefs honk, big Mahomes guy. And he,
to say the least.
To say the absolute least. And he posited that this year's Chiefs team will be the worst Chiefs team until Travis Kelce retires.
This coming year, or the one that just...
No, the one that just won the Super Bowl will be the worst Chiefs team until Travis Kelce retires, whenever that is. And I'm inclined, like, the more I sat and thought about that, the more I agreed with the sentiment.
I understand the sentiment. I will say that. And I think on paper, and if you just think about a bunch of young guys are going to get better, et cetera, I understand where he's coming from. I don't think I'm willing to make that bold of a proclamation. If you think about it, how many significant injuries did the Chiefs suffer this year?
Not many.
What was the...
Turk Wharton is off the top of my head.
Who was the most significant injury the Chiefs suffered for any period of time?
Hardman.
I'm not predicting injuries, and I think it's foolish to do so. But if McCole Hardman and never quite getting a full launch of Kadarius Toney after a midseason trade are your two biggest injuries over the entire course of the season, that is insane luck to a degree. And I know guys got banged up. I know not everybody was 100% healthy all game or for every single game. Joe Thuney toughed out some injuries early in this, or really middle of the season. We remember that, the real Iron Man stuff he was doing. But I don't know that you can... I understand where he's coming from. I will just leave it at that. I just think there are too many variables on a game-to-game, certainly season-to-season basis for me to be confident in saying that, but I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Again, on paper, just in terms of the linear development of NFL players and teams, it's a pretty easy thing to think, I think.
But as far as teams that know exactly what they're going to look like or how they're going to be composed going into next year, I mean, you have some teams that'll feel good about their quarterback, and you have some more teams that will feel good about like other positional groups on their teams, or feel good about who they've got, leading the way, their coaching staff. But yeah, like the full on franchise stability. Yeah, it might just be like, I mean, Cincinnati's got some things to figure out in free agency, but the core that has made that team really, really good should all be back.
Burrow, Higgins, Chase, Mixon.
Those guys should all be back.
The offensive line should be too, for the most part, because all those guys are on multi-year free agent deals or rookie deals.
I think that's right.
Defensively, there will be a little bit of turnover. Jesse Bates is gone.
Yeah, they're going to lose. They're going to lose Jesse Bates. They'll probably re-sign Jermaine Pratt.
I'd think so. They should be pretty good there. I think Anarumo is a hell of a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, they should feel good about their coaching staff. Like, Buffalo's got a ton of questions to answer on defense, and I think at the skill positions, because they've got to get Josh Allen some help.
They absolutely do.
So that's their mission. And I mean, that's not there are a lot of teams that will envy that position. Yeah, get Josh Allen some help. Yeah. Okay. You got the hard part done.
Yeah.
You've got the quarterback for whom you need to get the help for.
Where would Buffalo be if they didn't have Josh Allen? Like if you gave
where they've been historically.
if you gave them Derek Carr, where would they be?
Maybe fourth in the AFC East.
Really?
Nah, I don't know if they'd be fourth.
I think they'd be 8-9, 9-8.
Yeah, they'd have been right where everybody else in the division was.
Yeah.
Would have pulled them back to the field for sure. Philadelphia, obviously, the NFC will feel great about where they're at with Hurts, and I mean they've got some defensive pieces. They might lose Javon Hargrave in free agency. That would be a big loss after he had such a great year. But yeah, other than that, I'm struggling to think of other teams who they've got general managers, front office personnel that are sitting wherever they're sitting on February 23rd, thinking, and this offseason is not going to be that hard for me. I don't have a whole lot of questions to answer.
I think the number one most obvious one of the NFC is probably Philly because they've got a lot of those guys, not everyone, but a lot of those guys under contract. They have for sure figured out that their quarterback is the guy. So that's obviously encouraging for them. But in the NFC, there's a lot of teams that have a lot of questions. The flip side of this is what teams are in the worst roster situation where it feels like they are on the precipice of crumbling to pieces. And the number one answer for me is the Arizona Cardinals. They, I think, are in danger of having a cataclysmic season. Like they might be. I'm inclined to agree with Matt Verderame and what he told us on Tuesday. I think they might be truly awful this year. Like if they trade Hopkins, what else do they have? Seriously, what other offensive pieces do they have? They're not going to have Kyler all year.
No.
New coordinators who are all 19 years old. A first-time head coach who just got his defense roasted in the Super Bowl.
I love Rondale Moore, but is that all you got?
Could he be your number one receiving option? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Defensively, best of luck. Not a whole lot of talent there. J.J. Watt is retired after he had a pretty darn good final season in the NFL. I think they might be awful. There's a handful of teams. You know, Green Bay is a team that I think is in some danger here because if they bring back Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you better win because you're not going to be able to keep a ton of guys, so you better be able to win immediately. If you get rid of them, they're going to go into probably a quasi-rebuild. Every single team in the league should be envious of the Chiefs for about 900 reasons. Of course, Patrick Mahomes is at the top. Then it's Andy Reid. Then it's probably Travis Kelce after that because they're all the best at what they do. But, man, to be in this position again, to do this twice in 4 years, to bring back almost everyone from a championship team, that is just absolutely incredible. We're going to get to a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk some college hoops after this on 580 WIBW. Finishing up this edition of 580 Sports Talk, Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 WIBW and on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. A lot of college basketball on the docket tonight. Tons of games. I always forget that because I always think Monday and Tuesday are basketball nights because Big Monday and Big 12 teams usually play. No, there's usually like 15 to 20 games on those nights. There's 80 games tonight or something. All sorts of small conferences like the MEAC or the Big Ten, leagues like that, play games on Thursday nights. We, though, while discussing some spreads and some games and picks earlier today, you, Fulton, and I, we discovered one of the grossest over-under totals ever that I have ever seen, at least in modern memory. And the line has actually moved quite a bit to a point where I am far more comfortable betting the under tonight.
Oh.
North Texas at Charlotte. Two teams that have slow approaches to the game of basketball. They rank pretty darn far down in Ken Palm's tempo ranking. Charlotte is a home dog. They're a 3-point underdog at home. The over-under total for this game, Dan, is 112 points.
Is it 112 now?
It has moved up 3 whole points, or
Wow.
2.5 points from when we saw it earlier today at 109.5. 112 points. That would be an implied score, if I'm not mistaken, of 67 to 64 to go over. 67 to 64. That's terrible. No, I'm wrong. That math is horrible. That is absolutely disgusting math. It would be 57 to 54, I think. 57, 54. Yeah. I was way off. Yeah, 57 to 54. Are you comfortable betting on a game to have that few number of points?
No, I'm on the over on this game. I got the over 109.5. Now that it's moved up, I feel better about that.
Yeah, I mean, the smart money is scoring more than a JV high school girls basketball game.
When
But
these two teams played the first time this year at the Super Pit in Denton, the final total was 110. It was a 67-43 win for North Texas. Now North Texas goes on the road. Charlotte has revenge on their minds.
that Conference USA revenge game.
By the way, North Texas's head coach is Grant McCasland, which is a name that may be familiar to people who were really deep diving into a K-State coaching search last season. That was a name that came up as kind of a trendy mid-major name because North Texas was really good last year.
Yes, they were.
Let's just say that if K-State had hired Grant McCasland, they would not be nearly as fun to watch play the sport of basketball as they are under Jerome Tang.
Yeah, I think that's pretty darn fair to say.
If you like basketball but slower.
Ugh. What a horrible thing to say. Just a horrible concept in general. Any other games that you've got your eye on tonight?
It's a West Coast Conference Thursday night.
Oh,
You've got your America East Wednesdays.
We need a buzzer for these two things, although the season's almost over.
I've got my West Coast Conference Thursdays. St. Mary's, real good team. They've got essentially a regular season conference championship game coming up on Saturday against Gonzaga, which means I think they're in a look-ahead spot tonight against Pacific.
Okay.
Give me the Tigers plus 19.5.
Is this game going to be on Bally tonight?
I don't know if that's the Bally Sports game or if that's a WCC Network game.
I don't even know where you'd find the WCC Network.
Probably on an app.
I feel like I've seen their score bug before, and it looks like the Root Sports or AT&T Sports one. So maybe it's through them.
Right.
So if you're in like Eastern Washington, you'll be able to find it. You know what I will have my eye on tonight? I'm DVRing it because I will be doing high school basketball during kickoff.
What do you got?
8:00 Central Standard Time. Live from Lumen Field in Seattle. The St. Louis Battlehawks take on the Seattle Sea Dragons. Opening game, week 2 of the XFL schedule. Do you know where you can watch this game on TV tonight?
FX?
It's on FX.
FX has the spring football.
Stay tuned after XFL football for an episode of Atlanta and then reruns of Archer and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I'm way more interested in those.
I would watch I have seen every episode of Sunny like 100 times. I would absolutely watch those. Battlehawks going to get the win tonight, by the way. I'm going to call my shot right now.
Calling it?
Yeah, they are currently a 4-point dog on the road. Even money being bet on the two teams. Give me the Battlehawks in that one. I saw a tip the other day that said that until the Orlando Guardians are made a 10 or more point underdog in every game to bet against them. So I have already invested for Sunday when they take on the San Antonio Brahmas. They were very bad. They were by far the worst team of the 8 in opening weekend of the XFL. Did you see any of the action this weekend?
No, I did not.
Just didn't have the time for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, just didn't make the time in my busy schedule for XFL football.
It wasn't bad. I have been a consumer for many years of intentionally bad football. This was not it. I will talk to my dad, every weekend, and I'll say, "Hey, did you watch the USFL this week? You watch the XFL?" And he goes, "Man, I can't bring myself to watch fake football. I just can't do it." And I think a lot of people feel that way. In fact, the TV ratings were extremely bad for the XFL in week 1 of the season. But hey, if you're really craving football, you know where to look. We've got to take one final time out here on 580 Sports Talk this afternoon. We'll come back, get you the final word next here on 580 WIBW. Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk here on this Thursday afternoon. It's final word time. By the way, this was a very sad edition of 580 Sports Talk. This is the first time since August we did not speak to Mitch Holthus on a Thursday afternoon.
That's true.
Bummer.
Man, miss talking to Mitch on a Thursday.
I miss the Mitch, man. We could have had so many great conversations about Kansas high school football today.
We really could have. We should see if he could be our Kansas high school football storyteller. Just do story time with Mitch throughout the year.
Mitch, it's mid-June. The Royals are already 20 games under 500. Would you be willing to come on and talk about the Smith Center Redmen with us? You know he would say yes.
Yes.
That is an absolute guarantee.
I think he definitely would say yes.
Let's get to the final word. You're up first.
Final word for me. Oh, God love Fulton Caster coming on for Crosstalk with a little Royals optimism for your February 23rd. But hey, if you can't be optimistic today, when can you be optimistic?
Yeah.
So this is the time for all your Royals related optimism. I hope that if you are inclined to feel some, you will follow in Fulton's footsteps and be optimistic about the young bats, progress for the young arms, because we got a spring training game tomorrow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is already here. Final word for me for today. When you see a spread or an over-under that is just absolutely preposterous and you can't believe it, chances are I'm going to try to fade the public and go with the less common pick. You say a college basketball totals under only 112 points. Give me the under. I want no points scored in that game tonight. That's what I call a funder. Just have a lot of fun rooting for neither team to score and to shoot 25% from the field. That'll do it for 580 Sports Talk today. Don't forget that coming up tonight at 7:30 right here on 580 WIBW will be our Thursday night hoops for 580 Preps high school basketball coverage. Hayden takes on Eudora in boys action only. Right now, over on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9, Jake Laban on the call of some Washburn basketball as well. So hoops will take you the rest of the way here on the Alpha Media Topeka family of stations. We're back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Drzezinski. Thanks for listening to 580 Sports Talk.